So I guess we started the session at around 10 o'clock.
Yes.
And we have covered permanent establishment, which for all of us was a very heavy topic. And then I think Gaurav also took FEMA, and then Gaurav also took some session around the cross-border transactions and its impacts. That's what you covered, na, Gaurav? Yeah. So all these were very, very heavy topics for every one of us.
border cross kari de.
So now I'm going to be covering a lighter topic, but there are different aspects because per se, there's a tax aspect, and then I'm going to be dwelling some bit on the social security. And when we talk about social security, primarily provident fund. Now you would say, why is provident fund coming into picture? Why are we going to be talking about it? So I'll bring out some interesting facets around it. I'll also be touching a bit on the immigration side as well as to how it encompasses the entire area, because when our clients approach us for a particular problem statement, we cannot focus on one problem in a tunnel vision approach. So we have to see things in a wider vision and see how it will be impacting different aspects of a certain transaction. And the topic is that I'm going to be covering today is expats in India, expatriates in India, key consideration. And this all basically started, and this was a very new line of service which came somewhere around in 2000. Earlier, there was no discussion around expats coming into India, what will be the tax implications, so on and so forth. But as soon as the liberalization era began for India, there were many foreign nationals which started coming into India. And the primary reason for that was MNCs starting their companies, setting up their operations in India. As a result of which, whenever they used to set up operations in India, they required some competent person who can handle the India part as well as serve the purpose for the foreign location as well, foreign headquartered company as well. So as a result of which, these companies used to send their employees to India, and as a result of this, there were a host of different considerations which required a lot of analysis and which requires a lot of compliances as well. And that is how this entire expat taxation in India came into picture. I remember when I qualified in 2006, and I started my career with PwC. So I joined the specialized line within PwC tax vertical. It was called Global Employer Services or Indian Assignment Services, that sort of thing. And the terminologies that were used in that particular vertical was something that I never came across in my course. So that was a good learning experience as to how HR, how payroll, how legal, how tax, it all works together to structure this entire arrangement. So today, what I'll be covering is the expats working in India. Why is the need for foreign nationals coming into India? What was the historical reasons? Why still that trend is there? Although I personally think that trend has reduced a bit because our own workforce has become more competent. The second important aspect is around the key imperatives. So whenever there is a talk about expats coming into India, what are the key imperatives that one needs to consider while advising the clients? Of course, whatever advice we give, we try to give it in a holistic manner. The third important aspect that I'll cover is around the compliance requirements. So what are the compliance requirements whenever an expat comes into India? And of course, companies will approach. So primarily, you must be used to working for companies or the foreign MNCs trying to establish their base in India by way of a branch, subsidiary, or a JV. But many times you would have seen that these companies also start approaching you and say, look, my managing director is coming into India. He's a UK national. He's a US national. Will there be any compliance triggers? What do we need to do? Will there be any adverse tax consequences? So all these facets you need to keep in mind whenever you provide advisory. And then the second important aspect that I'll touch upon is around the secondment arrangement. Now, secondment, as you must have been going through different rulings, you must have came across this word secondment. It means temporary lending of the employees. You must have seen that there were rulings around it. Last year, we saw Northern Operating System GST ruling, which has raised quite an issue, and the government has started issuing notices and the clients are struggling. Then we'll also talk about whenever these secondment arrangements come. First of all, what are those kind of arrangements? What are the typical assignment structure when expats are coming into India? The second important facet is over the course of past years, what are the important rulings? So we're going to be discussing a very brief snapshot of what those rulings are, how it impacted, and what you need to be aware whenever you advising or structuring the assignment. At the same time, what I'll cover is the must-have factors. So whenever an assignment is structured, those documentations are put in place. First and foremost, what those documentations should be. Secondly, what should be the basic tenets of those documents or the factors that you need to consider. So that is also something that I'll touch upon. And in summary, we will conclude as to how where we are and what one needs to do in terms of addressing these different issues. So if we talk about why there's a requirement of, or why there was a need for foreign nationals coming into India. So as I was telling earlier that since liberalization era came into picture, there was a need for foreign companies who are establishing their presence in India. They required sound technical professionals who can come into India and train the staff as well as carry on the Indian side of the operations. So one of the requirements for utilization of individual as well as leadership skills of group entities. And these were individuals who were pretty highly qualified people, sort of like subject matter experts in their area, be it production, be it finance, be it engineering. And so headquarter entity always used to get that sense of comfort when these expats were carrying on their Indian operations. So for example, if you see that Maruti Suzuki, it was a sort of like JV when it started. And as soon as this JV came into picture, there was a lot of Japanese nationals which started coming in. Similarly, when the Delhi DMRC, the Delhi Metro Railway project started, so there were a lot of Japanese and Korean nationals which started coming in. So there was a need because Indian professionals were not that much equipped in handling the scale and the size of those operations. So at that point of time, there was a need and there was a huge sort of like you can say inbound expats coming into India and basically residing in different states of India. Second important need was a integration operations with group companies. Because these people were already well aware about their company policies, so they will well versed when they're establishing the operations in India as to how those policies should be aligned, as well as how to train the staff. So all these was different requirements which required the presence of foreign nationals into India. Now, when expats are coming into India, what are the key considerations that you need to keep in mind? And that's why this particular slide captures those different facets. So we have human resource consideration. We have, of course, the taxation. We will go into these aspects in detail. The third important aspect is the social security imperative. Fourth is immigration. FEMA also comes into picture. Why? I'll let you know. And then there are certain home country consideration. So in all totality, if all these facets are taken into picture, you can provide a holistic sort of like view or advise your clients around different facets around it. Starting with the human resource. So again, it's a very sort of like given area wherein whenever foreign nationals are coming into India, there has to be alignment of the talent mobility. So there's a need, let's suppose, for a managing director in India. So what would the headquartered entity would do? They would first align what is the requirement or what is the specialization that personnel should carry. And that is why the human resource angle come into picture, because the human resource guys will identify that this is the requirement. This is the person who would be filling that requirement. That person might be based in any part of the world, but that is the job of the human resource team to identify the talent, the right fitment, and then basically deploy that individual to India. The second important is the maintaining the equity and consistency among the global workforce. How do they maintain it? Again, there is a concept of tax equalization, tax protection. I'll go into it in deeper detail. Again, these are sort of like global terminologies, but you must have seen that these are nowadays being adopted by Indian companies as well, although not that popular with the Indian IT sector. The third important is the framing of the international policy. As I was telling, the policies alignment has to be done, keeping in mind the international as well as whatever will be the India related policy. So that alignment is something that human resource will take into consideration while deploying the right individual. The fourth important facet is around the payroll reporting. So US national coming into India or a UK national coming into India, what will be the payroll structure, whether the salary will be paid in India or outside India, or whether there will be a split payroll, wherein a part payroll will be carried out in India, whether there will be a shadow payroll requirement or not. So all this is something that the human resource team normally takes into consideration. They might also approach you for your thought process as well. The reason for that is because whenever an individual or a team of individuals is deployed, there's a requirement by the headquartered entity to arrive at what will be the cost of the or what will be the estimated cost of that individual, and that's why they might approach you for cost projection. So the cost projection is nothing but what will be the salary that will be paid to that individual in India. And because a person is moving from a developed nation to a developing nation, he or she might demand that, okay, fine, whatever I was getting, I need to, you guys need to pay me additional. So that additional amount can be in the form of a relocation allowance, additional incentives. So that adds up to my cost. At the same time, there will be a tax cost associated with it as well. So the HR vertical of that organization might approach you and say, okay, fine, can you help me in preparing a cost projection statement, which will help me in ascertaining what will be the cost, what will be the cost impact of that individual if he or she stays for a period of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever is the tenure that is decided upon. So this is one important and interesting aspect that, that the companies normally approach us and ask for a cost projection advice. Now, this is one slide that I'll be taking up in detail. See, when we talk about foreign nationals coming into India, normally they might be coming for a long-term tenure or a short-term tenure. Now, depending upon the tenure of that individual, there might be a tax implication. Now, salary we know is salary is taxable on due or receipt basis, but an important facet around salary is that as long as a person is rendering services in India, that particular salary income is liable to be taxed in India. There was a great sort of like misnomer wherein companies used to say, but my salary I'm getting paid in US. Why should I be getting taxed in India? So the answer to that is if a person is here in India rendering services from the Indian soil, then that salary income is liable to be taxed in India, irrespective of whether that salary is paid in India or outside India. So this is a very, very basic tenet that one needs to keep in mind regarding the taxation of salary income. The second important aspect is around the residency rule. So residency rule, because these are individuals, so the individual residency rules will apply. You must already be aware about the 60-day rule and the 365, 4 years rules and the 9 to 10 years. So all these aspects has to be taken into consideration when you advise your clients on how the salary income will be liable to be taxed in India. So if it is a person who is qualifying as an NR in India, he or she will be liable to be taxed only on their India source income. But if they are qualifying as a ROR, now ROR clause typically, which is resident and ordinary clause, typically gets triggered when a person first comes into India in their 3rd or the 4th year of the assignment. So let's suppose if a person is coming into India in the past, they have never been to India, you can straight away say that first 2 years is going to be easy for that individual tax wise, because they will be liable to be taxed only on their India source income. And when we talk about India source income, that is primarily salary income, because normally when these foreign nationals come into India, they don't invest that much. They don't buy house property, of course, because of the FEMA and all those considerations. But at the same time, they like to get their salary income and then remit it across to their home location. So first 2 to 3 years, normally the ROR clause doesn't get triggered. But around 3rd or the 4th year, analysis has to be done in terms of their physical presence in India. We have to keep in mind that these individuals also keep on traveling as well. So whenever we advise the expats as to their residential status, we take a copy of their passport. That is where you will get an idea as to for how many number of days the person was present in India. So there is an exit stamp and then there's an entry stamp when you look at the passport. So by that, you have to basically do a sort of like number crunching exercise and see how many days was that particular individual physically present in India to determine his residential status. So as I was telling earlier, NR is typically a sort of like cakewalk because of the simpler way of taxation. But as soon as an individual becomes ROR, that is where the complications arise. Now, the reason for that is normally these foreign individuals are coming from developed nations and they have a good sort of like investments there. Okay, they might be having a house property there. They might have put it on rent. They might be having all those investments that they would have made in foreign equities and stocks. Now, because they are triggering this ROR clause, the global taxation would come into picture. So as soon as that individual becomes a ROR in India, the first and foremost question you need to ask that individual is what is the other sources of income that you are earning besides the salary income. It could be house property, it could be capital gain income, it could be the interest they might be earning from their foreign investments or dividend income, or they might be indulging in the sale and purchase of the stock transaction. So all those factors you need to inquire about while determining their taxability. At the same time, what happens is depending upon the local laws in the home location. So I'll give you a very typical example of a US citizen. So US nationals are, even if they leave US, they continue to be a resident as far as regarding their taxation regime is concerned. So they are continue to be globally taxable as long as they're a US citizen. Now, in that case, we have a case wherein a person is a resident of US and that person is also a resident and ordinary resident of India. So this is a case of a dual residency, and wherever double taxation happens, you go and revert to double taxation avoidance agreement. Now, first and foremost, there's a residency clause in the DTAA, which says who is a resident of India. So they completely lay down those parameters. It is normally a person who is liable to tax therein based on the comprehensive taxation, domicile, and all those other factors. Then there is a second important clause which says wherever a person is a resident of both the states, then there is a tiebreaker clause. Tiebreaker clause basically lays down the parameters wherein you would be able to understand and basically analyze and then arrive at a conclusion where the ultimate treaty residency lies for that individual. This analysis becomes important because once you determine the treaty residency of that individual, basis that you will then work out how those particular relevant sources of income is going to be liable to be taxed, whether in India or outside India, whether any beneficial clause can be availed or not. At the same time, whether foreign tax credit can be availed in India for those foreign source income. Now, when we talk about the tiebreaker clause, typical parameters in most of the treaties are, it starts with the permanent home. So wherever the individual has a permanent home, then that state will be the state wherein his residency will lie. But at the same time, what is considered as a permanent home? Normally, you would say, okay, fine, permanent home is wherein I am owning a home. So let's suppose if I am owning a home in US, but I've taken a rental accommodation here in India, then what the treaty commentary says is that in India also there's a home available to him. So that will also be construed as a permanent home in that sense. So in that case, the scenario would be he would be having a permanent home in both the states. Okay. Now we move on to the second level condition. So it's all the layered clauses. So we start with permanent home, then we move down to the center of vital interest, then we move down to the domicile, and ultimately to the nationality. So wherever those parameters you will have to answer, and there's a detailed questionnaire that you can obviously download from desktop search, as well as it is available in commentaries as well. You need to. Yeah. So in DTAA commentary, you will see it will nowhere these tiebreaker clause, you will get a reference from the income tax act, but rather you will have to go through the DTAA. But I would suggest go through the commentary, OECD commentary or UN commentary, to understand how these different parameters play out. So permanent home, you will always ask this question, okay, what is a permanent home? How it is defined? So treaty will give, or the commentary will give you those ideas as to what is construed, and based on the international rulings as well, there would be some references around that as well. The second important is the center of vital interest. Now, when we talk about center of vital interest, it means economic interest as well as social interest. When we talk about economic interest, where is his driving license? Where is his voter ID? Where is his a lot of investments, whether it is in India or in abroad? When we talk about social interest, where are his children studying? Where are his parents? So India plays a lot of emphasis on the social interest because of the way we are structured. But if we look at international rulings, normally there is a lot of emphasis on economic interest, wherever the person has made an investment or driving license or voting rights and all those things. So it's a very subjective thing. And that is where we have seen that tax authorities would like to litigate and say, you might be arriving at a conclusion and you would like to ideally arrive at a conclusion that the person residency lies in the home state rather than India. But Indian authorities will always take a other view and always say, no, the residency lies in India only. So this is a very subjective thing. And that's why those questionnaire you send to the clients and the responses you send, that will be all part of your working paper to ensure that tomorrow down the line, if the case gets picked up for scrutiny, you have the ready reference available with you, that on what basis you arrived at that analysis of residency. Okay.
If a foreign national becomes a director in India, that case he will not live in India more than 180 days.
Yeah.
In that case, what's it's a resident, not even a resident, foreign citizen. What will happen in India?
So I'll come to that part because you have touched upon an interesting portion because a person is present in India for a period of less than 6 months. Okay. So yeah. So I'll come on that part because that is where the short stay exemption and all those benefits will come into picture. So once the residency part is clear, then we move on to the second part, because normally you would also always get that question, or normally there's a confusion among the client that if a person is here in India for a period of less than 180 days, then there's no taxation. And if you ask them where is this genesis coming from, they normally don't have answer. They might have heard it somewhere that it's a thumb rule. 6 महीने से कम है तो आप exempt कर दो, ठीक है. Now, short stay exemption is available both under the domestic law as well as under the treaty. Under the domestic law, there is a section 1066, which says that if a person, and it talks about specifically about a foreign citizen, where a foreign citizen is here in India and his stay in India is for a period of 90 days or less, then he or she will not be liable to be taxed in India, provided the foreign entity who has sent or deputed that individual is not engaged in any trade or business in India. Now, this is an important word, not engaged in any trade or business in India. This is a very wide connotation as compared to what you must have heard about the PE and all those things. Not engaged in any trade or business in India, plus whatever salary is being paid, that is not treated as a deductible while computation of the India tax return. So all these factors, and these are all cumulative factors. So once these factors get satisfied, you can be rest assured and say, okay, fine, that person is liable, not liable to be taxed in India. The second important thing, because normally 90 days is a very short period. It is hardly 3 months. So normally you would get people who would say domestic tax law is not getting fulfilled. So we move on to the treaty part. So DTAA has a separate article called as dependent personal services. Okay. That is normally article 12 or 14, depending upon the kind of a treaty. So dependent personal services article talks about the short stay exemption, and wherein that period of 180 plus or 182 days come into picture, which says that if a person who is a resident of a contracting state, which would be, let's suppose, US in this particular. So the first and foremost requirement is that person has to qualify as a treaty resident of US. That is the first requirement. The second is that person is present in India for a period of 182 days or less. Okay. But be very, very careful when you're reading DTAA, because there's a twist in every DTAA. You can't read one DTAA and say, okay, fine, I've read it all. So you have to be absolutely sure whenever you're analyzing your case, first determine from where that individual has originated. So if he has originated from US, look at the India-US DTAA. If he's coming from Germany, then India-Germany, and of course, likewise. Now, when you start analyzing the treaty, you will also see there is a difference in terminologies. So typically, one treaty would say 180 days period in any fiscal year. Okay, US. 180 days in any fiscal year. So fiscal year means April to, because there's a definition of fiscal year. So in India, it would be tax year. So tax year मतलब April to March में 180 days से अगर उसका less होगा तो ठीक है, that condition gets satisfied. But many people used to started abusing that particular para, because 180 days in any fiscal year. So what they used to do was they used to structure the assignment in such a way कि 3 महीने एक fiscal year में डाल दिया, 6 महीने से कम एक fiscal year. So आराम से बंदा साल भर रहेगा, but फिर भी वो टैक्स नहीं होगा. ऐसे भी आप स्ट्रक्चर करते थे. So in order to do that, some treaties started making those changes, and they started using the word 180 days in any 12-month period. So that means in any 12-month period, and you have to analyze it. So it will be from, अगर हम start करेंगे April से March आप देखोगे, उसके बाद आप May से April देखोगे. Yeah, you will have to keep on, and this is a very critical analysis because many people are not aware about this. So in any 12-month period जहाँ पे trigger होगा, you will have to absolutely go in much more detail to analyze whether in any 12-month period when this person was in India, whether he is fulfilling or not fulfilling that particular clause. The second important clause is because the person is originating normally from a foreign entity, that foreign entity should not have a PE in India. And PE, as Anshul would have covered the service PE clause as well. So because of the presence of an individual, wherever your service PE gets triggered, then automatically you lose out on your short stay exemption. So
I'll add into this. Say for example, we discussed in the morning branch office. अगर वो ब्रांच ऑफिस में डेप्यूटेशन
वो वैसे ही हो गया.
ब्रांच ऑफिस में उसकी सैलरी को वेट करना
ऐसा नहीं है कि हमने क्लेम करना था और नहीं किया तो हम चल जाएंगे। डिडक्टिबल का मतलब है कि डिडक्टिबल है। तो इफ दैट एक्टिविटी वाज पर्टेनिंग टू द ब्रांच ऑफिस and it was deductible for the Indian entity, means Indian branch office, then your short stay exemption will not be applicable.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That was section 1066. You are saying that the person has to be a resident of that.
He has to be a foreign citizen.
Foreign
Foreign citizen means non-Indian passport holder.
Okay. If Indian citizen.
कई बार ऐसा भी होता है सर कि
Yes, Indian
1066 का आप क्लेम करने जाओगे, आपके माइंड में ऐसे रहेगा कि मिल जाएगा 90 डेज से कम है, इसका एम्प्लॉयड विद द फॉरेन एंटिटी, द फॉरेन एंटिटी इज नॉट एंगेज इन एनी ट्रेड एंड बिजनेस इन इंडिया। बट कई बार ऐसा होता है द पर्सन इज इंडियन पासपोर्ट
Indian
होल्डर,
passport holder. Yes.
तो वहाँ पे लूज आउट हो जाएगा।
इंडिया में नहीं मिलेगा बट ट्रीटी में फिर भी क्लेम कर सकते
फिर आप TT में जाओगे,
Okay.
वहाँ पे आप रेजिडेंसी को देखते हो, वहाँ पे सिटीजनशिप,
वहाँ पे आप TT रेजिडेंसी देखोगे।
TT में residence. Okay.
या सो
एंड इसको हम जनरली शॉर्ट स्टे एग्जेम्पशन बोलते
Hmm.
हैं, जनरल पार्ट।
generally we call it as a, you will not find any reference in DTAA about short stay exemption. This is what we colloquially call it, but the correct terminology will be have a look at the dependent personal services article, and therein you will find the relevant clauses. Okay,
Which form is to file regarding this form number 3 you are talking about?
which form?
Regarding the short exemption of the foreign national.
Hmm.
The form budget.
Hmm. Return बन अब इसमें भी I'll come to that part whether return filing is required or not. Okay, and that is where Gaurav's statement would also come into picture because we are taking a treaty benefit. Okay, now first condition is resident of a foreign contracting state. Second condition 182 days in any 12-month period or a fiscal year. Third condition is not creating any permanent establishment in India. And the fourth condition would come, and there's the fourth condition. Normally you would see 3 conditions, but नहीं, आप उसको dissect इस तरह से करोगे that there will be 4 conditions. The fourth condition is whatever remuneration is being paid, that is not borne. Borne आएगा या deductible word आएगा. So Anshul would have gone through that particular clause कि borne और deductible का क्या difference होता है.
बॉन्ड डिडक्टेबल का मतलब है कि बॉन्ड अगर परमानेंट एस्टैब्लिशमेंट नहीं कर लिया सैलरी को, तो फिर आप चाहे 2 दिन के लिए आए हो, वो 2 दिन की सैलरी टैक्सेबल हो जाएगी, बिकॉज आपकी वो इंडियन टैक्स रिटर्न, मतलब जो एम्प्लॉयर था बेसिकली उसने इंडियन टैक्सेस के अगेंस्ट उस सैलरी को क्लेम कर लिया, डिडक्शन क्लेम कर ली, तो उस सैलरी पे एग्जेम्पशन बनने नहीं मिलेगी, कोई रिटर्न भरना पड़ेगा,
रिटर्न भरना पड़ेगा। इसमें सर ऐसा है कि लेट्स सपोज यू सैटिस्फाई ऑल द कंडीशन, so you come to the conclusion that short stay exemption is available. Now client would be very happy, मेरे को तो मिल गया, कुछ करना नहीं है, because short stay exemption हो गया, income is not liable to be taxed in India, तो एक compliance आपका piece हो गया. But earlier people used to take a position that short stay exemption हो गया, there is no requirement to file the return of income. Okay, now if you see, now that position has gone a little change, because there's now a disclosure requirement when you're filing your return of income. Plus, at the same time, there have been rulings as well that wherever you want to claim a treaty benefit, you need to file the return of income in order to enable the tax authority to determine that whether the person is eligible to claim the treaty benefit or not. आपने तो अपने suo motu decide कर लिया कि treaty benefit मिल गया, but let the authorities to decide. How will the authorities decide? Once you file the return of income. And another important aspect is coming on the TRC part. यहाँ पे आपको TRC लेना पड़ेगा because you are taking a treaty benefit. So TRC of that individual. तो अगर बंदा यूएस से आ रहा है, आपको यूएस का टीआरसी लेना पड़ेगा फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर फिस्कल ईयर. नॉर्मली अगर आप ले लोगे टीआरसी, उससे नहीं, इट विल नॉट वर्क. यू विल हैव टू टेक टीआरसी फॉर एवरी ईयर. ओके, सो दिस इज व्हाट द शॉर्ट स्टे एग्जेम्पशन इज ऑल अबाउट. So we have covered short term and foreign tax credit. Again, foreign tax credit is an important thing because wherever there is a double taxation, now this will become relevant when the person is qualifying as a treaty resident of India. Okay, let's suppose a scenario where a person qualifies as a treaty resident of India. That person is earning a house property income. House property income के आप clause में जाकर के देखोगे that is liable to be taxed in India. Okay, now US would have taxed it based on their source. We are taxing it based on the residency source. Okay, there's a double taxation. You can't take benefit under each of the article. What will you do? The double taxation gets triggered. But at the same time, there would have been taxes that would have been deposited in US. Now, because the person is qualifying as a treaty resident of India, it's a foreign sourced income, not India source. Had it been India sourced income, उसपे आप FTC नहीं ले सकते. Foreign sourced income पे आप FTC लोगे. And foreign जब आप FTC कैसे लोगे, उसका पूरा डिटेल वो होगा, फॉर्मूला होता है, ठीक है ना. So let's suppose अगर उसने foreign tax credit लिया 40% का, you can claim a foreign tax credit of 30% only. 10% is a leakage. So normally, again, there's always a confusion with the client wherein they say foreign tax credit मेरे को मिल जाएगा, ठीक है, I am covered. There's no adverse loss. But when you sit down to have that calculation, you will see that there's a leakage which is happening from the side of the individual, because it all depends upon the tax rate. If the person is getting tax rate at a rate of 40%, India will allow a tax credit of only 33%, depending upon the slab rate of the individual. बाकी आपका tax गया, double taxation में वो हो गया. The other important aspect is, once you have calculated, got the taxes deposited, then at the time of filing the return of income, you need to basically fill those proper disclosure. There's a foreign tax credit schedule that you need to fill. At the same time, there's a Form 67 as well that you need to file. Now, earlier, many people were not filing it, and then there were those demands and all those things which came into picture. Form 67 आपको return time से पहले file करना होता है. तो फॉर्म 67 आप फाइल करोगे और उसके बाद आप रिटर्न ऑफ इनकम फाइल करो. फॉर्म 67 में you would need to basically furnish the proof. Now, what are those proofs? How will you justify? Now, this is where things get a lot more complicated. What happens is, India follows a fiscal period of April to March. US follows calendar year. तो mismatch हो गया यहाँ पे period का. So what will you do? So you will have to do a proportionate mechanism wherein you will have to basically calculate the taxes as well as the income on a proportionate basis, or you will have to wait for the return finalization to happen as well. So right now, if we are sitting in 22-23, अभी हम return file करेंगे 22-23 का, right? अब अगर हम मेरे को foreign tax credit लेना है, तो I will include the January, February, March months as well. मेरे पास रिटर्न आ जाएगी यूएस की कौन से 2022 की, बट मेरे पास 23 की रिटर्न तो है नहीं, राइट? तो हाउ विल आई टेक दोस टैक्सेस? So what the law says is, either you rely on the US tax return, okay? Second, you rely on whatever payment of taxes. जैसे हमारे यहाँ पर चालान होता है, US में भी होता है. Once you pay, then there is a proof of the taxes deposit. Either you rely on that, or you get a certificate from the employer organization that this was the salary income which was paid for this period. This was the taxes that was deducted. Okay. या कहीं पे अगर वो भी नहीं मिले, then there is a form W2. So like in India we have a form 16, in US we call it as a form W2, wage statement होता है, उस पे भी आप reliance कर सकते हो. So typically when you file the form 67, you have to basically document or basically attach all the supporting documents as well whenever you're filing it. Normally we have seen at a CPC level, foreign tax credit हमेशा disallow हो जाता है. Okay. And this is a great frustration among the individuals, among the organization, and many times they come back to us, they think that हो सकता है हमने गलती कर दी है, या आपने गलती कर दी, वो ठीक से फाइल नहीं हुआ. The problem is not that. I think CPC is not well equipped to understand the nitty-gritties around how the FTC has been calculated. And that is why normally what you need to do is basically then transfer the case from the CPC to the jurisdictional officer, and then basically make him understand with all those documented proof and get that demand removed.
ये चीजें ना बहुत आपको फ्रीक्वेंटली वहां होंगी जहाँ पे ये आईटी कंपनीज में लोग बाहर डेपुटेशन पे जाते हैं.
या
ना वहाँ पे आपके सामने ये आज की डेट में अब बहुत ज्यादा आने लगे हैं. एंड वी इन नॉर्मल पार्लेंस आल्सो वी फेस लॉट ऑफ सच चैलेंजेस के बंदा गया है 4 महीने के लिए 5 महीने के लिए बाहर, टैक्सेस पे हो गए, उसका यहाँ पे फॉरेन टैक्स क्रेडिट क्लेम करना. तो ये चीजें इसलिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है.
And this is not typically applicable for inbounds. ये outbounds में भी होता है. And when you talk about outbounds, it means Indian employees going outside India. Now there is a totally different facet around it as well. When Indian employees is going outside India, when it would get triggered, because Indian employee तो ROR बनता ही है. So let's suppose an Indian employee goes outside India during the month of November. तो November गया, आपने 182 day का clause का beneficial हो गए, because he is going outside India for the purpose of employment. So we'll say okay fine, 60 day नहीं, मैं 182 day का beneficial clause I will take it and qualify him as a resident of the India only. Okay. Now, minute he becomes a resident of India, let's suppose he left India in the month of November, then December, January, February, March की जो foreign source income है वो भी इंडिया में टैक्स होगी. That is the salary income, worldwide income, taxable in India. उस पे फॉरेन टैक्स कटा होगा, उसका आप यहाँ पे क्रेडिट लोगे. अगेन वहां पे टीटी टाई ब्रेकर एनालिसिस करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि कई कंट्रीज में ऐसा होता है डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द कैलेंडर ईयर वाइज चलता है. तो हो सकता है वो बंदा 2022 में नॉन रेजिडेंट हो, 23 में रेजिडेंट बन गया. तो जनवरी, फरवरी, मार्च में अगेन यू विल डू द टाई ब्रेकर एनालिसिस की कहाँ पे रेजिडेंसी रजिस्टर करिए. तो अगेन इट बिकम्स वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड वेयर इन we have all this different cases coming up both for the inbounds as well as outbound. अच्छा, आउटबाउंड में एक इंटरेस्टिंग और भी होता है, स्प्लिट रेजिडेंसी का भी कॉन्सेप्ट होता है, which I don't think tax authorities normally accept. And वो हमने भी करवाया था। So there's a split residency concept कि आप part of the year के लिए आप resident ordinary resident बन गए, part of the year के लिए you qualify as a non-resident. Now this is something that you will not
find in the act.
in the act, but this is something which is emanating from the DTAA's commentaries, international rulings. Plus I remember there was a Bangalore, I think
Indian ruling also.
नहीं बैंगलोर में था ना, बैंगलोर का रूलिंग था।
तो ये ध्यान नहीं है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन,
हाँ,
बट है
इंडिविजुअल का ही था भाई, wherein they I think he was a employee of Fidelity, so therein they allowed a split residency, and when we took that same thing and tried our case in Delhi, so they rejected that in the first instance, but I think in the CIT appeals it got cleared. Yeah.
तो स्प्लिट रेजिडेंसी दोबारा एक बार छोटा सा समझा देते हैं। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल आप अगस्त तक बाहर थे, अगस्त में अगर आप इंडिया में वापस आते हो तो 182 डेज से ज्यादा हो गए, और से फॉर एग्जांपल आप इंडियन सिटीजन ही हो, पहले से इंडिया में रहते थे, सिर्फ 1-2 साल के लिए गए थे, तो आप ROR बन जाओगे उस साल में। तो ROR बन गए तो पूरे साल के लिए टैक्सेबिलिटी आ गई। बट नाउ वी से कि हम अगस्त तक वहां थे तो हम उस कंट्री में भी इस पर्टिकुलर कैलेंडर ईयर के लिए रेजिडेंट थे। तो हम क्या करते हैं, स्प्लिट रेजिडेंसी कर देते हैं, मतलब इंडिया के फाइनेंशियल ईयर को स्प्लिट कर दिया। हमने बोला कि 1 अगस्त तक आप बाहर थे तो 1 अगस्त तक का हम आपको नॉन रेजिडेंट मानेंगे, और 1 अगस्त के बाद जब आप इंडिया में आ गए तब से आपको रेजिडेंट मानेंगे। सो दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ स्प्लिट रेजिडेंसी।
या सो
इसके बाद
नहीं मैं बताता हूँ,
टैक्स कंप्यूटेशन करते टाइम करते हैं,
बेसिकली दिखाएंगे क्या है,
रेजिडेंट ही दिखाएंगे। हाँ,
आप दिखाओगे रेजिडेंट, बट पोजीशन आप स्प्लिट वाली लोगे।
टैक्स कंप्यूटेशन करोगे वहां पे आप स्प्लिट कर दोगे, और जब केस उठेगा देन यू विल हैव टू जस्टिफाई।
तो इनफैक्ट जो अंशुल का एग्जांपल है, इसको मैं थोड़ा सा और कॉम्प्लिकेट या थोड़ा सा और इसको इंटरेस्टिंग बनाता हूँ।
अगस्त
अगस्त तक की आपकी ROR वाली आएगी।
ITR में कैसे आएंगे? प्रेसिडेंट में आएंगे,
फॉरेन इनकम है, किसमें वो एग्जेम्प्ट हो जाएगा ना आपका।
पहले आप
नहीं अंशुल, व्हाट आई वुड से वाज पर्सन कमिंग इनटू इंडिया, लेट्स से कोई पर्सन लिविंग इंडिया, अगस्त में उसने छोड़ा इंडिया को, टिल अगस्त ही इज ROR, ओके।
हमारा केस लिविंग वाला ही था।
हाँ, लिविंग वाला है ना। अगस्त से लेकर दिसंबर तक ही विल बी ROR, liable to be taxed on his worldwide income, okay. Now December, January onwards, because the calendar year changes, so in that country he would end up qualifying as a resident.
Yes.
So January, February, March का, because he is a resident rendering services there, तो January, February, March ही आप exempt कर दोगे।
मैं सुबह बोल रहा था ना कि हम दुबई से UAE से सर्टिफिकेट लेके आए थे, वो इसी केस के लिए लेके आए थे।
इसमें तीन चीजें होगी, आपको एक तरह से ना, we used to do spreadsheet working, used to provide 3 columns, 3 periods हो गए। Till August आपके Form 16 इनकम आ गई, okay, because he was rendering services to the Indian entity।
फिर दिसंबर तक आएगा,
फिर अगस्त से लेकर के दिसंबर तक आ गया, जिसमें वर्ल्ड वाइड इनकम आएंगे। वर्ल्ड वाइड इनकम बोले तो पूरा बाहर का जो सैलरी इनकम उसको मिल रहा है, बिकॉज ये स्टार्टेड रेंडरिंग सर्विसेज फ्रॉम अगस्त। सो अगस्त से लेकर दिसंबर की जो ओवरसीज सैलरी इनकम है वो रिपोर्ट होगी, उस पे आप FTC लोगे, ठीक है। फिर थर्ड कॉलम बनाओगे जिसमें उसकी इनकम आप कैलकुलेट कर लोगे, व्हाटएवर इज फॉरेन सोर्स इनकम, उसको आप एग्जेम्प्ट करोगे, एंड दैट एग्जेम्प्ट इनकम विल बी रिपोर्टेड व्हाइल फाइलिंग द रिटर्न ऑफ इनकम।
अब यहाँ पे हम, मेरा थोड़ा सा डिस्कनेक्ट है, हम इसमें एग्जेम्पशन नहीं कहते, क्योंकि what I am saying is that it is not exempt as per the income tax law. I am saying that it is not chargeable to tax itself, because it is not chargeable because I have become a non-resident in India and my salary is now accruing outside of India, और मैं सर्विसेज भी बाहर ही रेंडर कर रहा हूँ, so there is no taxability which arises। ये हमारे केस में हुआ क्या था, उसने वो इनकम एग्जेम्प्ट में रिपोर्ट कर दी, उसी चक्कर में उसका केस खुल गया।
Yes,
this is not exempt। आप इतनी बड़ी इनकम
सर इसमें भी एक और ट्विस्ट आता है, जो अंशुल वाला एग्जांपल, इसमें भी 2 केसेस होते हैं कि जनवरी, फरवरी, मार्च में वेयर द पर्सन वाज रिसीविंग सैलरी। नॉर्मली IT कंपनीज में आप देखोगे कई बार ऐसा भी होता है कि उनका पेरोल इंडिया में चलता रहता है,
उसमें भी एक और है,
उसमें भी एक ट्विस्ट आएगा।
तो ये थोड़े से इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट्स हैं, क्योंकि इंटरनेशनल टैक्स थोड़ा मतलब पेचीदा है थोड़ा सा, बट बिकॉज़ वी शुड बी अवेयर अबाउट ऑल दिस। सो रिसीव तो हो गया, इंडिया में इनकम टैक्स एक्ट में अगर आप देखोगे तो रिसीव चाहे
NR रिसीव्ड इन इंडिया टैक्स होगा।
बट एज सून एज वी गो थ्रू द ट्रीटी में बोलता है कि भाई वो आप डिपेंडेंट पर्सनल सर्विसेज वाले आर्टिकल में जाओ और उसके पहली बात तो आप रेजिडेंट ही नहीं हो इंडिया में, तो रेजिडेंट ही नहीं हो तो वो इनकम आपकी टैक्सेबिलिटी पे ही नहीं आएगी। फिर चाहे उस पे केस लॉस नहीं है कि आपको चाहे इंडिया में रिसीव हुआ हो चाहे नहीं हुआ, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, बिकॉज द टैक्सेबिलिटी इज नाउ गवर्न्ड बाय द ट्रीटी। तो ट्रीटी में आप चले गए तो रिसीव्ड इंडिया में होने से भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता।
In fact, you will receive queries from your client wherein they say, I am paying salary in India. You are saying not taxable. What will be my tax withholding obligation? मेरे को TDS काटना भी है कि नहीं काटना? And that was where the moot point was. Earlier, what company used to do was historically, they used to play conservative. ये 3 महीने की जो सैलरी जनवरी फरवरी उसमें TDS काट लेते थे और फिर रिटर्न फाइल करते वक्त इसका रिफंड लेते थे। रिफंड आता नहीं था, ठीक है, वो लिटिगेशन में चला गया, वो सारा हो जाता था। And these you guys used to be pretty senior professionals. So we have seen cases wherein the refund claim itself used to run into crores of rupees. So मतलब कि इतना रुपया आपका वेस्ट उसमें चला जाता था, and then we used to fight litigation on that. Now there was a change in position. We started taking a different position because of the treaty thing. Because अगर treaty में भी आप देखोगे तो dependent personal services article is also divided into 2 parts. One part focuses on short stay exemption and one part simply says that wherever a person is earning a salary income, he is a resident of their state and rendering services there only, it is liable to be taxed in that state only unless until that person is rendering services in the other state. Okay, then in such a case maybe they have used the word may be liable to be taxed in India or whatever. इस केस में अगर आप जनवरी फरवरी मार्च देखोगे, रेजिडेंट ऑफ यूएस हो गया वो जनवरी फरवरी मार्च में, रेंडरिंग सर्विसेज इन यूएस, सो इंडिया में टैक्सिंग राइट तो है ही। सो we started taking this particular exemption, treaty exemption at the time of filing the return of income. Now the moot point was whether at the time of basically doing my withholding tax, can I take a treaty benefit or not? Okay. Now there was a lot of ifs and buts around this, but I think a couple of years back there was 2 advanced rulings on this. One was I think HP and one was Texas Instrument, wherein they more or less went with this thought process that yes, you can take a treaty exemption because it should not unnecessarily burden the individual by way of excess tax deduction and then claiming at a refund at a later stage. So more or less situation settled है, but at the same time इस पे आपको litigation at a lower level बहुत मिलेगा depending upon the position you take. What?
AR is related to that specific entity only.
So AR is special. So that's why whenever you take that position, you have to caveat it by saying it's based on a double AR ruling.
Now you're about the taxability of a non-resident. Now सबसे पहले फैक्ट ये आएगा कि whether वो non-resident है कि नहीं.
Yes, yes.
अब वो non-resident वो AR कैसे देखते हैं कि वो पूरे साल के लिए देखते हैं. So then you will have to justify कि नहीं ये non-resident बन गया. So now just to conclude आगे भी क्वेश्चन मतलब आगे भी है.
इनकम टैक्स पोर्टल पे ना इनकम टैक्स कैलकुलेटर आता है, तो उसपे आप जैसे नंबर ऑफ डेज डालेंगे उसमें लिखेंगे फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ जॉब।
तो ये चीजें कैलकुलेटर से नहीं होती।
नहीं, इनमें जब इनकम टैक्स गवर्नमेंट से ही है तो वहाँ पे स्टेटस एनआरआई ही दिखाता है।
नहीं वो आपको दिखाएगा ये लेकिन ये तो आपका डोमेस्टिक लॉ के हिसाब से हो रहा है ना।
इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट तो वो नहीं उसको एक्सेप्ट करेगा, वो तो आपको जुडिशियल प्रेसिडेंट के हिसाब से दिखाना पड़ेगा। मैं बता रहा हूँ कि ये स्प्लिट रेजिडेंसी जो है ना वो आपको जनरली आपको असेसमेंट के दौरान बता करके लेनी पड़ेगी, या आप एग्जैक्टली वो निकाल ही दो तो वो पता ही नहीं।
जनवरी फरवरी TDS reduction
yeah that position can be taken yeah
सर, लेकिन उसके लिए आपको वो TRC की फॉर्म देना है,
वो सारा रखना पड़ेगा, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन पूरी रखनी पड़ेगी। FTC क्लेम करेगा जस्ट बिफोर द फाइलिंग द रिटर्न ऑफ इनकम। नहीं FTC का फॉर्म आपका अपलोड हो जाएगा। आई थिंक मैंने लास्ट ईयर ट्राई किया था, तब FTC का फॉर्म अपलोड हुआ था। सो माय केस वाज अ टैड बिट डिफरेंट, वेयरइन the consultant had filed the return of income, disclosed the FTC, but didn't file the form 67. So department disallowed the FTC claim, and this was after 2 years. We tinkered around with it, and we were able to file form 67, and then at a AO level we got the relief.
cannot file the form 67 after the period of filing.
नहीं अब उसमें भी तो चेंज आ गया ना, अब बिफोर द एंड ऑफ द फिस्कल ईयर यू कैन फाइल
कर दिया उसको, लास्ट ईयर उसको अपडेटेड रिटर्न था, पहले उसमें सेक्शन लिखा हुआ था।
नहीं 2000
आपको देखना पड़ेगा कि मान लीजिए ओरिजिनल रिटर्न ही फाइल थी, नहीं है, तो आपको पहली बार ही रिटर्न फाइल करनी है अंडर दी 148 रुपीज। तो फिर तो जो भी आपको क्लेम करना है उसके लिए जो करना पड़ता है वो आप कर सकते हैं ना।
आउटबाउंड में इनबाउंड में तो सबसे कम फॉर्म फाइल करना पड़ता है इनबाउंड के लिए, इनबाउंड में आउटबाउंड के लिए भी फॉर्म कोई फाइल करना पड़ता है कोई
आउटबाउंड के लिए क्या जैसे टैक्स डिक्लेरेशन फॉर्म,
हाँ
हाँ होता है ना, फॉर्म 30C होता है ना, 30C।
अच्छा
ITRU में होगा, मिल जाएगा,
मिल जाएगा वो,
मिल जाएगा।
कर दिया, अमेंडमेंट आ गई, लास्ट ईयर अमेंडमेंट आ गई।
ITRU में यू कैन टेक, हमने लिया हुआ है प्रैक्टिकली।
मेरे ख्याल से
Yeah. So there are a lot, many more slides. I think we quickly jump on to this, some important tax position that you will come across, some important terminologies. So there's a concept of hypothetical taxes. Now this concept you will nowhere see in the Income Tax Act. What happens is, so just a very plain simple example. Let's suppose there's a person who is sitting in Singapore and he's coming to India. Singapore में tax rate typically individual का 20-25% होता है. India में 30-35% का अगर हम लेके चलें, so that person will be vary in terms of coming to India because he would say, boss मेरा तो tax liability ज़्यादा हो जाएगी. So they will not typically like to go to a higher tax jurisdiction. So in order to basically provide them that impetus or boost कि यार आप आ जाओ इंडिया में, there is a tax equalization policy which is framed, which says कि जो भी additional taxes होंगे वो company bear करेगी. Okay, so in this case 25% is what that individual will bear by way of a hypo tax. So hypo tax is nothing but a notional tax which will be deducted from his payroll. उनकी आप payslip पे देखोगे एक hypo tax component होगा. This is not actual taxes that has been deposited with the Singapore tax authority, but it's just a notional tax which has been deducted. तो 100 में से उसका 25 रुपए कट जाएगा, 75 रुपए उसको मिल जाएंगे. ठीक है, इंडिया में वो आएगा, उसका 100 रुपए में से जब आप टैक्स कैलकुलेशन करोगे तो इस 25 रुपए को इट्स नॉट अ टैक्स, it's a hypo tax. और इसमें जयदेव एच राजा and there were multiple rulings as well. I think Yoshu Kubey and all these rulings which have specifically clarified the position. The hypothetical taxes is nothing but a diversion of income by overriding title because the expat has entered into a tax equalization policy. So diversion of income by overriding title के चलते this amount can be basically आप deduct कर सकते हो while you are calculating the salary income. So this is one concept that will come across whenever you are analyzing the pay slips. Whenever you would see a foreign payslip, there would be one component of hypo tax, which will make you understand that yes, there is a tax equalization component which is involved. The second important factor is home country social security contributions. Now, this is one of the major factors around this entire secondment fiasco. Okay, individuals coming into India, they would typically like to receive their salary abroad because or they would like to basically continue with their foreign payroll. The reason for that is the social security. Okay, that is the factor why you will see that they keep their payroll abroad and then there is a cross charge to the Indian entity which happens. This is a typical expat structure. Now, when we prepare the tax calculation, we have to keep this in mind that in the pay slip you will not see employer सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन. आज आप अपनी भी पे स्लिप कभी देखोगे तो उसमें कभी एम्प्लॉयर कंट्रीब्यूशन टू प्रोविडेंट फंड नहीं आता है. ओके, आपका जो पोर्शन आपने कंट्रीब्यूट किया वो आ जाएगा, एम्प्लॉयर नहीं आता. बट यू हैव टू कीप इन माइंड कि नॉर्मली सोशल सिक्योरिटी में एक एम्प्लॉयर पोर्शन भी जाता है. नाउ द क्वेश्चन कम्स अप, व्हाट विल बी द टैक्सेबिलिटी, बिकॉज कंट्रीब्यूशन ओवरसीज हो रहा है. इंडिया में अगर प्रोविडेंट फंड होता है उसका एग्जेम्पशन है 12% का, बट बाहर का सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन इज देयर. व्हाट विल बी द टैक्सेबिलिटी ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर कंपोनेंट? So there is a Supreme Court ruling called as LW Russell ruling, wherein they have laid down certain parameters that because these social security contributions are not creating a vesting benefit for the employees during the year of the contribution, one can take a position that during the year of the contribution, the employer contribution will not be liable to be taxed. This is a position that you will be taking. आपको domestic law में नहीं मिलेगा. You will have to rely on the judicial rulings for taking this position. The third important factor, which again not many of us are aware, it's the Section 1010cc benefit. This is one of the sort of like good benefit that you can give to employees as well as the company. The reason for that is, what is Section 1010cc? पहले देखते हैं. Section 1010cc कहता है कि wherever an employee is being provided a non-monetary benefits, non-monetary benefit, non-monetary benefit in the form of a perquisite. Then if the company is bearing taxes on those non-monetary perks, then it will be treated as exempt income. Okay. Now the question comes up, what happens in the case of a tax equalization? In the case of a typical tax equalization, the taxes are effectively borne by the company. जो फॉरेन एम्प्लॉयर आता है, जो फॉरेन एम्प्लॉय आएगा, सॉरी, जो फॉरेन एम्प्लॉय आएगा वो हमेशा ये बोलेगा कि मेरे को 100 रुपए चाहिए, ठीक है, मेरे को वहां पे सिंगापुर या यूएस में 100 रुपए मिलता था, आई वांट 100 रुपए, आई डोंट वांट एनी इंडियन टैक्स डिडक्शन कम्स इनटू प्ले. ओके, इंडियन एम्प्लॉय या उनका जो ग्लोबल पॉलिसी वो बोले ओके फाइन यू विल गेट 100, बट जो भी टैक्सेस जो होंगे वो हम बियर करेंगे, द इंडियन एंटिटी विल बियर इट. ओके, so because Indian entity is bearing it, this is a monetary obligation of the employee being discharged by the employer. It is a perquisite. It adds up to his salary income. Again, there is a gross up which is happening. Tax on tax lag gaya aapka. ठीक है? There is a multiple stage grossing up. Unless until you take 10(10)cc, you will end up in that loop. And the multiple stage grossing up का ये होता है कि उसमें effective tax rate आपका almost 54 to 55% चला जाता है. Okay, and this is the taxes which is borne by the company. So ultimately, it's a cost for the company. Okay. Now, 10(10)cc अगर आप लोगे, so what will happen is you are basically taking that exemption and आप इस multiple stage grossing up को single stage grossing up पे ला रहे हो. You are restricting the tax gross up to the factor of 30 only. It is not going to be iterative calculation which happens. Okay. But at the same time, the flip side to this approach is that you will lose out on your corporate tax deduction. जितना आपने एग्जेम्पशन लिया है अंडर सेक्शन 10(10)cc, उसका आपको सेक्शन 40 में जाके डिसअलाउंस मिल जाएगा. नाउ यू विल से फिर बेनिफिट क्या हुआ इसमें? Earlier there was not much benefit because the corporate tax rate and your individual tax rate almost used to be the same. Now your corporate tax rate is 25% and your individual tax rate is 35, 40%, as high as 40% जा रहा है. तो जहां पे आप 10(10)cc का बेनिफिट लोगे, आप 40% अपने टैक्स को कम कर रहे हो और उसका आप 25% का डिसअलाउंस करना. तो देयर इज अ क्लियर टैक्स आर्बिट्राज व्हिच इज हैपनिंग, व्हिच यू कैन क्लेम. ओके,
If the company has to file in the form to claim your 10(10)cc.
नो, इसमें कोई सेपरेट फॉर्म नहीं होता है, ये आपके टैक्स ऑडिट रिपोर्ट में रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए.
टीडीएस रिटर्न में शायद
टीडीएस रिटर्न में तो आएगा.
टीडीएस रिटर्न में
सो व्हेन यू आर फाइलिंग योर 24Q एनुअल, जो फोर्थ क्वार्टर का होता है, जिसमें आपकी पूरी सैलरी का जो पूरा फिगर्स आता है, यू विल हैव टू शोकेस, बिकॉज़ उसमें आता है ना कि सेक्शन 10 में आपने कौन कौन सा लिया एग्जेम्पशन. तो सेक्शन 10(10)cc का वहां आपको रेफरेंस देना पड़ेगा. एंड एट द टाइम ऑफ फाइनलाइजेशन ऑफ योर 12BA एज वेल. 12BA इज नथिंग बट योर स्टेटमेंट ऑफ परक्विजिट्स. तो उसमें भी आपको, आप नीचे देखोगे उसमें आता है फैक्टर कि आपने कौन से टैक्सेस पे किए अंडर सेक्शन 192, कौन से टैक्सेस पे किए अंडर सेक्शन 192(1)A. 192(1)A वाला जो सेक्शन है, दैट इज लिंक्ड विद योर 10(10)cc बेनिफिट. ओके.
So for
तो ये
this,
आपको
Salman,
basically
TDS
compensation
Salman need to be deducted for that. We have to pay this tax through TDS.
वो तो नॉर्मल, हाँ 281 से आएगा.
तो सर वो टैक्स है वो एज एग्जेम्पशन हो जाएगा जो हमने क्लियर किया है.
हाँ, कंपनी में एक जो उसका नॉन मॉनिटरी पर्क पे जो टैक्स होगा, that will be allowed as a deduction. Now the interesting fact is, in the past, tax borne by employer there was a judicial rulings wherein some said it's a monetary perk. जहाँ ये monetary perk करके आपका 10(10)cc benefit हो गया. But then there was I think the Delhi special bench ruling of RBF Rig, which said that the taxes borne by the employer is nothing but a non-monetary perk only, and hence after that 10(10)cc का benefit लेने लगे. अच्छा, इसमें भी एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग एंगल है, why companies didn't used to take it earlier and why whenever we used to finalize the tax competition, we always used to take it for companies either they were loss making or they were presumptive tax company. 44BB companies जो होती थी उसमें हम ये सेक्शन 10(10)cc का लेते थे. Reason for that was there was one clause in the Companies Act, 1956 का जो Companies Act उसमें clause होता था कि the company will not be paying any benefits which is tax free by nature. Section 200 of the Companies Act होता था, right? So as a result of which there was a sort of like a scenario wherein my section 200 of the Companies Act used to say कि company कोई भी benefits tax free नहीं देगी employees को. Okay, and then there was a section 10(10)c भी say कि आप अगर दोगे तो आपको exemption मिल जाएगा. So as a conservative approach, many companies used to take a call कि boss हम नहीं लेते हैं, because then we will be violating the provision of Companies Act 1956. Now that has also changed because if you look at Companies Act 2013, section 200 का कोई वो नहीं हुआ है. It has not been carried forward.
हाँ एग्जेम्पशन मिल जाएगा सैलरी एम्प्लॉय की, वो डिसअलाउंस हो जाएगा टैक्स पोर्शन.
Yes. Okay. Any questions around this?
Just to add one more thing, you can take particular this benefit in high paid directors of the company, say for example management में 5 करोड़ के ऊपर के जो लोग हैं सैलरी पे बैठे हैं, उनकी अगर टैक्स लाइबिलिटी आपकी 42% के आसपास जा रही है या इवन इन द न्यू रिजीम 39% के आसपास है, देन प्रोबेबली आप ये बोल सकते हो कि हम आपको टैक्स फ्री देंगे और वो उतना सीटीसी आप उतना कम कर दीजिए एंड देन योर ग्रॉसिंग अप विल बी मच लेसर. उनको नेट इन हैंड ऑलमोस्ट उतना ही जाएगा एंड द कंपनी विल आल्सो सेव एंड द employee will also as a group matlab as a company you will save some taxes and probably this is some tax advisory you can take to the companies and corporates who are actually paying such kind of salaries to their employees and charge a fee.
You asking something or
I had actually a very interesting case and I'm seeing whether 10 CC I can apply or not. In my case, what's happening is client, foreign company has sent some employee to India. Indian company is paying a part of the salary and major salary is coming from outside India.
Yeah.
It has some risk of permanent establishment and provident fund, but still they are continuing because they do not want to disclose all the salary of expat to them in the matter.
Yeah.
How would you claim 10 CC? Because there's a understanding of the department that if you're taking a 10 CC benefit for expat, you are not claiming same as a corporate tax deduction. But now here, German companies, US companies, local companies making the payment.
Yeah.
They will not be anyway taking the exemption or deduction.
No, you can take, see, what your case is similar to what or approach by and large followed by Japanese companies who were establishing the presence in India. The reason for that was, and there's a historical background to it, कि MD की सैलरी इतनी ज्यादा होती थी कि इंडियन कंपनी उसको सस्टेन ही नहीं कर पाते. अगर आप क्रॉस चार्ज कर दोगे तो पे कैसे करेगी, राइट? देन अगेन देयर विल बी इक्विटी इन्फ्लक्स होगा, फिर वो सारा कॉम्प्लिकेशन होगा. तो हाउ दे वर्कड अराउंड दिस वाज दैट मेजर पार्ट ऑफ द सैलरी वाज पेड अब्रॉड with no cross charge to India. Of course, there was a risk of PE. Of course, there were other exposure as well, but they didn't use to cross charge it. And the minuscule portion, 30% जो आपको वीजा लेने के लिए हेल्प करेगा, उतना पोर्शन आप इंडिया में पे करते थे. Okay, now as a tax consultant, we had to take that position that whether that income is liable to be taxed in India or not. Technically speaking, that income, even if it is not cross charged to India, is liable to be taxed in India, right? Because that is pertaining to their India services only. Okay, now the question comes up whether the whatever is the additional taxes that will be borne by the company only at the end of the day. कंपनी ने बियर किया, बट आपके केस में गौरव ये होगा कि कंपनी अगर बियर कर रही है तो कौन सी पोर्शन पे कर रही है? खाली इंडिया पे कर रही है, जर्मनी या जर्मनी को रिपोर्ट ही नहीं किया.
इंडिया वाला तो इंडिया बियर करके टीडीएस काट देते हैं.
हाँ,
देन फॉरेन वाला क्या करता है, अपना सेपरेट रिपोर्टिंग फाइल करते हैं,
सेपरेट फॉर्म 16 करके. ओके,
तो उसके 2016 में दो एम्प्लॉयज इनकम आते हैं.
नहीं, बट इसमें आप टेंडेंसीज तो ले सकते हो ना. टेंडेंसीज यू कैन टेक, नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन.
No, intention is not getting defeated, Gaurav. Why I would say that? Because India is not allowing that exemption.
Yeah.
आपने किसी foreign country में claim किया, that is your foreign country.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So India को क्या है कि India का tax loss नहीं होना चाहिए. So if you are claiming an exemption, Indian tax authorities should not be providing a deduction of the same amount to somebody else. तो इंडिया में प्रोवाइड नहीं हुआ, तो इसलिए मेरे को नहीं लगता कि कोई चैलेंज आना चाहिए. प्रैक्टिकल तो वो बी वाला तो है ही है, वो तो रहेगा ही. हाँ,
that is. Now, one more component that you need to keep in mind is ESOPs. So typically, foreign nationals coming into India from a headquartered company, the headquartered company might be listed. They would have rolled out some employee stock option or ESPP plan. Then, because that person is qualifying as a R1 in India, ESOP की taxability आपको देखनी पड़ेगी. So ESOP की taxability कैसे होती है? ESOP की taxability होती है fair market value as in the date of the exercise minus the exercise price. But at the same time, you have to be very, very clear in understanding what is the residential status of that individual. If that individual is qualifying as NR in India or not ordinary resident, then only the proportionate ESOP benefit will be liable to be taxed in India. Okay. Now, what is the proportionate benefit? How will you arrive at that? The proportionate benefit is from the, so you are aware about the ESOP में कितनी stages होते हैं? Grant, vest, exercise. Okay. So from the date of the grant till the date of vest, that is what we normally construe as a vesting period. Now, in this vesting period, let's suppose it was, this vesting period was a period of 300 days, wherein for 100 days, that person was present outside India and 200 days, he was present in India. So we will do a proportionate allocation based on this vesting period. So 200 days का जो proportionate amount होगा, that will be offered to tax in India. 100 days जो होंगे वो आप नहीं करोगे.
Similar treatment we will go for others.
Yes, same. RSU is also same plan.
One more thing in ESOP. अगर आप ROR बन गए हो और आपको ESOP मिल रहे हैं, तो please declare this as a foreign asset.
Yes. Yes.
But अगर Indian, just sorry मैं interrupt कर रहा हूँ. अगर Indian है, उनको वैसे American company से उनको hire करती है, तो उसके इसमें तो ऐसे नहीं है ना?
Foreign assets होगे ना, क्योंकि उसको foreign listed assets मिले ना.
But Indian subsidy है. उसके इसमें foreign asset declare करना पड़ेगा.
नहीं.
American की
shares कहाँ के हैं? कौन सी कंपनी के हैं? बाहर की कंपनी के होंगे ना.
बाहर की कंपनी के हैं.
आज की डेट में आपके जो फेसबुक के एम्प्लॉइज इंडिया में काम कर रहे हैं उनको फेसबुक यूएस के शेयर्स मिलते हैं. ठीक है ना. तो उनके जो डीमैट अकाउंट होता है, नॉर्मली वो डीमैट उनके बाहर के डीमैट नहीं होगा. ठीक है ना. बाहर के डीमैट अकाउंट में वो पार्क होता है. राइट. तो जब आप इंडिया में रिटर्न फाइल करोगे, देन इन फॉरेन एसेट डिस्क्लोजर जो शेड्यूल होगा, यू विल रिपोर्ट इट देयर.
ओके. ये बहुत बार मिस हो जाता है.
ये बहुत बार मिस हो जाता है.
ना ब्लैक मनी लॉ में पकड़ा जाता है. बहुत मोटी पेनल्टी है, 10-10 लाख.
And that is where the next section comes in. That is where the next section comes into play, wherein we say that there is an increased focus of tax authorities on the compliance.
ये RSU का केस जो है या ESOP का केस है, इसमें कोई फॉर्म लेना है, 30C जो लेना पड़ेगा हमारे को.
30C is a form that whenever a person leaves India. Now, again, this is something not many people are aware. It's a self-declaration form. Okay, 30C is a form that when a person leaves India for employment, business, whatever purposes, this is an intimation form to the tax authorities that I'm leaving India. This is a copy of my passport. These are my tickets. These are my past 3 years returns.
Sure.
This is just to make them aware that in case they want to issue anything, any notice या कुछ भी आएंगे, अब तो खैर सब everything comes via email. So this was just a pure intimation. I would say earlier people were very regular in terms of furnishing this form. Nowadays, hardly anybody bothers in terms of furnishing this. And anyways, all of these individuals started receiving it on their email. So इतना बड़ा issue है नहीं 30C का, but we normally recommend individuals who go outside India to report it or intimate the India. इसकी कोई penalty नहीं है.
But the person who is not going outside India, but still getting the foreign assets here in India.
नहीं, कुछ नहीं फाइल करना, उसको foreign assets में उसमें करना पड़ेगा.
Is this form compulsory or what?
30C is not compulsory. 30C
तो नहीं है, लेकिन कई बार क्या होता है, एक्सपैट इंडिया में आया और वो बाहर जा रहा है. कभी-कभी ऐसा होता है कि आपको इमिग्रेशन वाले रोक लेते हैं.
नहीं, there are two things. So Indian individual, you going outside India, there is a 30C. There is a 30C. वो 30A होता है.
30A होता है.
हाँ. That is called जिसको हम कहते हैं income tax clearance certificate. So foreigner अगर इंडिया में आता है, whenever they come to India, they reside for a period 2 or 3 years, and this is a mandatory requirement that whenever they leave India, they are required to get a ITCC, which is income tax clearance certificate. Okay, and which is normally furnished in form 30A. So उसके लिए there is a more extensive procedure wherein there will be an indemnity which will be furnished by the employer. That this person was on my rolls, he or she is leaving India. अगर इनकी कोई भी tax liability आएगी तो वो हम bear करेंगे. That is the onus that a Indian organization takes, and that is furnished to the tax authorities, basis which they will give you form 30A. हाँ, ये मैनुअली है. ये मैनुअली है.
आना चाहिए, मतलब जनरली बहुत सारी कंपनीज प्रेफर करते हैं कि आप सर्टिफिकेट लेके आओ हमें.
Yes.
क्योंकि वो सर्टिफिकेट अगर नहीं है तो इमिग्रेशन अथॉरिटीज आर अंडर देयर पावर टू stop you from voting here.
Yes, they have the discretionary right to ask you for the TRC, and if you are not furnishing it, then they have the power to stop you. Practically मैंने होते हुए नहीं देखा है. We have seen cases wherein people have left India, particularly जो Chinese और Korean national है, उनको तो लॉ का वैसे ही आधा चीजें पता नहीं रहती है, तो वो चले जाते हैं, उनको अभी तक नहीं हुआ. But there was one case, I think it was an American national who didn't took income tax clearance certificate, and his household goods were crossing via ship, and the ship master asked for a TRC. वहां पे उसका stop कर दिया गया था. So that was one interesting case that we came across. So normally foreign nationals coming into India, leaving India, जो ITCC है, that is a mandatory requirement. इसमें भी आप एक flexibility ले सकते हो, क्योंकि normally क्या होता है कि इसको इनकम टैक्स अथॉरिटीज को देने में आपको महीना 1.5 महीना होता है, कई बार वो देते भी नहीं, वो आपको तंग करेंगे. ठीक है ना. So what you can do from your side is file it with the tax authorities, keep the acknowledgement, share the acknowledgement with the assignee, tell him to carry that acknowledgement, so that in case the custom authorities ask him, you can say, see, I have I have filed it. Now it is the job of the income tax authorities to furnish it to me. Okay. So that is one workaround to this
And
situation.
generally वो filing थोड़ा पहले कर दो, मतलब
हाँ.
20-25 दिन पहले कर दो टिकट के डेट से पहले, ये ना हो कि आपकी टिकट कल की और आपने आज फाइल किया.
Yeah. Okay. So another key thing you need to remember is around the black money law. As Anshul was saying, why does it get triggered? Okay. So again, you see in your income tax return form, wherever person is qualifying as ROR, there is a foreign asset reporting schedule. Okay. You are required to report your foreign assets, foreign income. If you are a beneficiary in any trust account or any bank account, you are required to do it. Now, earlier when it came into picture, not many people were very serious about it. They used to say and particularly foreign nationals will be very wary कि हम क्यों दें, हमें इससे क्यों मांगा जा रहा है, what will happen. From your side, you will have to tell them first and foremost, this is a mandatory requirement. Secondly, it is a disclosure that you are doing. Okay. And this is something akin to FATCA. जो यूएस में फैटका है, दिस इज समथिंग दैट. तो अगर आप यूएस में करोगे तो यहाँ क्यों नहीं करोगे, तो यहाँ पर रिपोर्टिंग करनी पड़ेगी. द थर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग जिसको सुन करके उनके थोड़े से सेंसेस आ जाते हैं is if somehow you get caught, then there is a penalty of 10 lakhs plus other repercussions as well. Okay. ऐसे एंड में वही काम आएगा. तो
इसमें कोई वो नहीं है, लिमिट नहीं है, मतलब चाहे आपका $1 का एसेट हो, आपने नहीं रिपोर्ट किया है तो ये पेनल्टी ट्रिगर हो सकती है.
Yes, this penalty plus because if the foreign income is also not reported, there is additional penalty as well. वो आपकी वो income tax से सारा वो आ जाता है. So whenever you are preparing a return for a foreign national, always be after his life to report his foreign assets. If that person is not reporting, at least from your side, you put it on paper that I asked you, you didn't report it, then these are the implications that you will be sitting upon. So this is your job as a consultant. Yeah.
बैंक अकाउंट का बैलेंस में कुछ लिमिट नहीं है कि जितना बैलेंस होगा तो वो भी रिपोर्ट करना होगा.
बैंक का भी कैसे था कुछ
लिमिट नहीं है,
I think
करना होता है आपको. अगर बैंक
नहीं कुछ था
बैंक अकाउंट छोड़िए, आप बैंक अकाउंट में सिर्फ सिग्नेटरी हैं किसी फॉरेन बैंक अकाउंट में, आपको अकाउंट भी रिपोर्ट करना है.
नो, इसमें अंशुल एक चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है कि इफ यू लुक एट द इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फॉर्म, दे से that you are in India on an employment or visa and you acquired a particular asset when you were qualifying as a non-resident of India and you're not generating any income from that asset, then you're not required to report it. ये ध्यान रखना, ये इनकम टैक्स ये फाइनल डिटेल्स में आता है.
डिटेल्स में आता है, लेकिन सी हम जो क्या करते हैं, अगर आप एक बार ROR बन गए, so all your foreign assets should be reported. इसमें और मैं एक बताता हूँ आपको जो कि होता है, आपका सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन 40K होता है, 41K. तो 41K जो होता है वो सोशल, जैसे यहाँ पे आपका पीएफ होता है, ऐसे यूएस वगैरह में आपकी सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन चल रहे होते हैं. से फॉर एग्जांपल यदि फॉरेन एक्सपैट्रिएट नाउ हैज स्टेड फॉर मोर देन 2 इयर्स, जो कि 3rd ईयर लग गया है और आप ROR बन गए, तो वो सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन अकाउंट भी आपको डिक्लेयर करना है एज अ फॉरेन एसेट.
यस.
तो ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ आपको किसी भी तरीके का फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट है, आपको किसी भी तरीके का ऑथराइज सिग्नेटरी हो किसी बैंक अकाउंट में, मान लो आप डायरेक्टर थे फॉरेन कंपनी में, आप अभी भी उसके ऑथराइज सिग्नेटरी हो, तो आपको वो चीजें भी डिक्लेयर करनी पड़ेगी. जैसे पर एक फॉरेन नेशनल केस में नहीं, आप इंडियन
ROR के केस में भी है, ROR के केस में, आपके केस में भी है.
मैं तो सिर्फ एग्जांपल ले रहा हूं, उस केस में जब मिस हो जाता है ज्यादा. बट से फॉर एग्जांपल आजकल क्या होता है, आप फॉरेन कंट्री में $100 में कंपनी खुलवा लेते हो, यूएई में कंपनी खुल जाती है बहुत आराम से, 2 मिनट लगते हैं, आप वहां के ऑथराइज सिग्नेटरी हो उस कंपनी के बैंक अकाउंट के, दैट बैंक अकाउंट हैज टू बी रिपोर्टेड इन योर इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न. Those shares have to be reported in your bank income tax return. So these are very critical aspects.
अच्छा, इसमें एक और इम्पोर्टेंट पोजीशन है that sometimes people miss is we have a foreign asset reporting and then there's an asset liability schedule. Okay. Now the question comes up कि मेरे को asset liability में foreign assets भी report करने, answer is yes. वहाँ भी report करना पड़ेगा because if you have more than 50 lakhs of income, there is a mandatory requirement to provide AL reporting. तो उसमें आपको foreign asset को भी report करना है. ये नहीं कि आपने सोचा मैंने यहाँ report कर दिया तो यहाँ नहीं करूँ.
In that case, if you're only a bank account signatory, then how? What?
नहीं, वो नहीं करना है. See, assets and liabilities में आपका वो नहीं आएगा ना. That's the asset liability schedule. Foreign asset में आएगा. Okay, so we jump on tax protection. I think we have talked about it. P, we have covered. Transfer pricing and GST impact is there, so we'll cover it in the subsequent slides. Okay. How much time we have? We are over already.
पार्टिसिपेंट
Can we continue for half an hour more?
हाँ, कर लो।
Huh? 30 minutes. I'll try to cover it as much as possible. Okay, I'll not cover this one because we've covered it. Now, this is one important thing that you need to be aware. Why I'm touching on the aspects around the Provident Fund. Now, before 2008, what used to happen was foreign nationals used to come into India and unpe PF nahi lagta tha. For the simple reason that their wages used to be more than the threshold limit. So earlier threshold limit was 6,500 and then it got increased to 15,000. Okay. So there was no applicable. And why this entire thing came into picture was there was many Indian employees who used to go abroad and they used to contribute toward the overseas social security scheme, particularly US and UK. So वो जाते थे वहाँ पे contribute करते थे. They used to work there for a period of 2 years, 3 years, and they used to come back, and that social security was gone. So Indian government started chasing US and UK and saying कि boss मेरे बंदे जा रहे हैं social security contribute कर रहे हैं, आप उनको पैसा release करो, because there's a good amount of money which is locked abroad. In fact, US में तो almost $1 trillion social security तो Indians ने ही contribute कर दिया. Okay, so they approached it. तो US UK ने बोला boss no way, because Indians का जो outbound है वो ज्यादा है as compared to the inbounds to India. So the power of the, or the balance of the power, whatever you say, is with US and UK, because there are a lot more people who are going abroad than the people coming into India. So they don't have, भाई ऐसा ना कि मेरे पास income ज्यादा आ रही है, why would I like to forego that income? So in order to do that, the Ministry of Labor and Employment came with a notification. They said, okay, fine, let's twist a bit of their arm. And so in 2008, they came out with an amendment. And they said, okay, fine. International worker, foreign nationals coming into India, there would be a mandatory requirement to contribute towards PF. Okay? ये trigger हो गया. अब आपके दिमाग में होगा कि यार foreign national है क्यों? मैं वही ना 15,000. Yeah. तो अब इसको मैं थोड़ा सा there's a good amount of story around it. So fine. So there was a. I remember I prepared a flash alert when this entire thing came into picture, and I was not even aware about what the EPF Act is all about. And I was working on it, and it was a 12% impact, 12 plus 12% impact. There was a 12% contribution by the employer, 12% contribution. So straight away 24% without the statutory limit. Now think of a expat who is coming into India with a 2 crore package, जिसका almost basic salary 1 crore के आसपास होगा, 1 crore into 24, 24 लाख. अब वो एक्सपर्ट क्या बोलेगा, बॉस मैं तो नहीं दूंगा, मैं तो टैक्स ही नहीं देता, तो मैं सोशल सिक्योरिटी तो क्यों दूंगा? सो कंपनी विल बियर इट. एम्प्लॉयर पोर्शन ऑफ द सोशल सिक्योरिटी तो कंपनी बियर करती है, चलो ठीक है, वो एग्जेम्प्ट हो गया आपका टैक्स से. एम्प्लॉय पोर्शन ऑफ द सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंपनी स्टार्टेड बियरिंग. नाउ अगेन मॉनिटरी ऑब्लिगेशन ऑफ द एम्प्लॉय बीइंग डिस्चार्ज बाय द एम्प्लॉयर, ग्रॉस अप हो गया, टैक्स ऑन टैक्स हो गया, कॉस्ट कहीं और की कहीं और चली गई. But at that point of time, when this amendment came into picture, foreign companies were not that much perturbed because of the reason they said, okay, fine, because there was a clause which was built in EPF, कि as soon as you complete your assignment or as soon as you are unemployed, you withdraw that money. बोले ठीक है. So whenever they left India, they started applying for withdrawal. 2 साल पैसा रखा, 8% का आपने ब्याज कमाया, उस समय शायद 12% था. बोले ठीक है. So the Social Security Authority observed this. So they said, okay, fine, you are too smart. 2010, again, they made an amendment. They said, okay, fine. Now, what happened in this period was there were European countries which started entering into a social security agreement with India. 2008 से पहले आपने कभी social security agreement का नाम ही नहीं सुना होगा. In foreign and overseas, there was a very popular concept of totalization stroke social security agreement. Basically, this is nothing but like a DTAA. To avoid a dual coverage of the social security. अगर मैं यहाँ पे दे रहा हूँ तो वहाँ नहीं दूंगा, अगर वहाँ दे रहा हूँ तो मैं यहाँ नहीं दूंगा. Under no incident there should be a double social security contribution that you need to pay. Okay, so this was the basic premise of the social security agreement. Of course, it is a lot more complicated, but will not go into that much detail. So इन्होंने कहा कि चलो ठीक है, social security agreement first किससे enter हुआ, बेल्जियम के संग हो गया. Then we entered into, I think, social security agreement with Germany and other European countries. US UK नहीं आए टेबल पे, बहुत डिस्कशन में वो लोग नहीं आए. 2010 में the government came out with another amendment. They said, okay, fine, people who are contributing towards social security in India, they cannot withdraw their sum unless until they attain the age of 58. Okay, unless until these are people who are coming from a SSA countries. सो बेल्जियम से बंदा आता, असाइनमेंट कंप्लीट करके जाएगा, वो अपना पैसा निकाल के चला जाएगा। बट अगर सोशल सिक्योरिटी एग्रीमेंट है आपके पास, तो आपको एक डिटैचमेंट बेनिफिट भी मिलता है, यू गेट अ डिटैचमेंट बेनिफिट। सो लेट सपोज आई एम a Belgium national coming into India, I will get a certificate of coverage from Belgian Social Security Authority, which will say I am contributing there, as a result of which India में आपका PF नहीं लगेगा, ठीक है? So Belgium started, Germany started, then Japan also came into picture. Japan was a good amount of population, so they got entered into फटाफट वो लोग social security agreement sign किया. Republic of South Korea आ गया. I think way down the line we have social. रशिया के संग नहीं है, रशिया के संग नहीं है, यूके के संग नहीं है, यूएस के संग नहीं है, चाइना के संग नहीं है.
कंपनी के ऊपर मैंडेटरी है पीएफ काटना है कंपनी के ऊपर.
Yes, this is obligation of the company.
अभी एलिजिबल नहीं है अगर लेस देन 10 एम्प्लॉइज हो तो उस केस में अगर फॉरेन नेशनल डायरेक्टर.
Very good question. So let's suppose there is a company. अब पीएफ कब लगता है? जब आपका 20 और मोर देन 20 होगा, ठीक है ना? 10 नहीं होता, 20 वो ग्रेचुटी में होता है, ग्रेचुटी में 10 वाला होता है. तो अगर आपका पीएफ 20 एंड मोर देन 20 एम्प्लॉइज है तो आप पे पीएफ लग जाएगा. देन यू आर अ कवर्ड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट. इफ यू आर अ नॉन कवर्ड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट तो पीएफ नहीं लगेगा. ओके, बट देन पीपल थॉट कि चलो एक काम करते हैं, हम 4 एंटिटी कर लेते हैं, 15 एम्प्लॉइज करेंगे, ठीक है? But if you look at PF legislation, they are again very smartly worded it. 4 आपकी companies हैं governed by the same management. It will be construed as one single entity only. PF लगेगा ही लगेगा. So आप ring fencing उन्होंने कर दी है वहाँ पे. नहीं, किसी में नहीं है. अगर if I am an establishment which is less than 20 employees, first of all I will not be a covered establishment. If I am not a covered establishment, irrespective of whether I am a domestic or an international worker, PF नहीं लगेगा, right? So
So in that case, 1821 if they are PF number in India.
नहीं, फॉरेन नेशनल में 15,000 लिमिट है ही नहीं. इंटरनेशनल वर्कर में 15,000 लिमिट ही है. उनका जितना बेसिक होगा उसका 12% एम्प्लॉयर, 12% एम्प्लॉय होगा. ओके, so because there was no wage ceiling, this was a good amount of hit, and this money cannot be withdrawn unless until the employee attains the age of 58 or coming from a country with which India is SSA. Okay, so direct hit for US and UK. Right now, what is the standard position that company is taking? Always be aware from where that person is coming from. If UK, US, PF लगेगा ही लगेगा, उसका PF देना है आपको, employer देगा, or depending upon the social security equalization or tax equalization policy, the employee portion of the provident fund which is borne by the company, that will also be grossed up. अब इसमें क्वेश्चन आता है कि 1010cc मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा. Yeah, so इसमें भी there is a bit of a gray area, because you will not find any reference in any judicial ruling wherein they would have said that PF portion of the employee being borne by the employer is a monetary or non-monetary. Okay, what exactly is a non-monetary? You have to understand. आज मेरा tax is a non-monetary because it is a benefit going to the tax authorities. It never comes back to me. But PF में it is ultimately my fund. Okay, so I can't say it is a non-monetary benefit. So one position that you can take is 1010cc नहीं मिलेगा इसमें. But एक other जो thought process आता है वो आता है यार, immediately as of now when I'm filing my return of income, that benefit is not with me. I'm not eligible to withdraw that amount. अभी मेरे को उसका vesting right ही नहीं मिला है. Okay, so one thought process again, it can be treated non-monetary. I would say rather conservative position would be to take it as a monetary and not avail the 1010cc on this particular component. Okay, so this was all about social security. India has operational SSAs with 18 countries, so there's a fair bit of planning also that you can do. Many companies also started saying, okay, fine, let me do one thing, because India has social security agreement with Netherlands. So मैं Netherlands में एक umbrella entity बनाऊंगा, employees को वहाँ पे base out करूंगा. I will contribute towards the Netherlands social security, and then यहाँ पे ले आएंगे, यहाँ पे हमें social security contribution नहीं करना पड़ेगा. So these are the different structures that companies started doing by and large. But अभी जो position है कि it's a fairly settled position. People are contributing towards social security, and companies have also factored these costs into their account when they are structuring the assignments. Now, immigration becomes important because whenever an organization is sending their individuals, these are foreign people, unless until these are Indian origin people, for them there is a OCI and PIO. ओवरसीज सिटीजनशिप और पीआई, तो उनके केस में वीजा रिजीम नहीं लगता है. Typically, your foreign passport holder, foreign nationals who are coming into India, they are required to come into India under a valid visa. Why companies will approach you is in terms of understanding what is the difference between a business visa and employment visa. Normally, a person is coming into India to render services. Per se, that person needs to come to India under a valid employment visa. Employment visa की थोड़ी सी guidelines you should be aware that it is for specific purposes, specific tenure होता है. अगर आप चाइना से कोई बंदे को लेके आ रहे हो तो बहुत ज्यादा there is a problem. They get a very limited employment visa for a period of 3 months. Then you have to again seek extension. If a person is coming from a friendly country like Japan or US और ये सब से, तो उनको 1 year तक का वीजा आराम से मिल जाता है. The key thing that you need to remember is there is a threshold limit. अगर आप सोचोगे कि बंदे को मैं 10 लाख की सैलरी दिखा के इंडिया में एम्प्लॉयमेंट वीजा दिलवा दूं तो वो नहीं मिलेगा. The prescribed salary threshold limit for getting an employment visa is $25,000. Unless until that 25,000 criteria is getting fulfilled, that person will not be able to get an employment visa. This criteria is applicable for almost all, unless until is a language interpreter and all the social workers, उनके केस में नहीं लगता है. But by and large, technology professionals or whatever those professionals are coming into India, उनको $25,000 की limit लगेगी. Now, what exactly is $25,000 limit? It's your salary which is being paid plus your perquisites. So if the company is providing them a company leased accommodation, तो उसका जो perquisite value होगा उसको भी आप factor in करके $25,000 के उसमें structure कर सकते हो. So accordingly, you will have to frame the employment contract in such a fashion so that $25,000 is depicted. That this person will end up getting so and so amount at the end of the day.
ये क्या है देखना, 25,000 क्या है?
ये salary limit.
ये जो आपका मैंडेटरी पीएफ का फॉरेन वो फॉरेन नेशनल के लिए सपोज इंडियन बाहर पैसा हो जाता है कम बैक, तो उसके लिए भी होगा.
If he is Indian passport holders नहीं लगेगा. Indian passport holders के लिए डोमेस्टिक लॉज विल बी डोमेस्टिक है, आप जो 15,000 वाली लिमिट है वो अप्लाई करती है. Even if it is he is staying outside India, he is holding Indian passport, he is under a employment visa there or a work permit there, he comes back to into India, then also it will not be applicable. He will be treated like a domestic employee. Okay. FEMA. So Foreign Exchange Management Act. Now, why this comes into picture is because, as I was telling you earlier, that the foreign nationals would ideally like to receive their salary outside India. So the question comes into picture whether FEMA allows us, these people to receive their salary in their overseas bank account or not. Answer is, if they are deputed, which is seconded to India by the overseas entity to the branch, office, subsidiary, JV or a group entity in India, then they can continue to receive their salary outside India, provided due taxes have been deducted and deposited. Okay. But having said that, if the structure is, or the assignment structure is in such a way that that individual is per se localized in India, मतलब उसका फॉरेन एंटिटी से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, पर से ही इज लोकलाइज्ड इन इंडिया, ही इज गेटिंग इंडियन सैलरी, देन ही कैन नॉट रिसीव द सैलरी ओवरसीज अकाउंट में, नहीं मिलेगा उसको. इंडिया में आप उसको पे करोगे एंड देन ही कैन रेमिट दैट सैलरी आउटसाइड इंडिया आफ्टर पेमेंट ऑफ द विदहोल्डिंग टैक्सेस. सो दीज आर द टू सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक रिस्ट्रिक्शंस. क्यों? एम्प्लॉयमेंट वीजा में आएंगे, यहाँ पे आपका अकाउंट खुल जाएगा, पैन नंबर और ये सब लेकर के. क्यों? नहीं, सारे सबको खुलता है, सारे फॉरेन नेशनल से उनका होता है इंडिया में अकाउंट. सेविंग अकाउंट होता है. एम्प्लॉयमेंट वीजा होता है नॉर्मली, दे वुड नॉर्मली इंसिस्ट ऑन एम्प्लॉयमेंट, और टूरिस्ट वीजा में नहीं खुलता है.
लोकलाइज कैसे हुआ? मींस आप कहते थे
सी लोकलाइज में ऐसा होता है ना कि देयर आर टू काइंड ऑफ स्ट्रक्चर दैट नॉर्मली कम्स इनटू पिक्चर. One is I continue to be on the rolls of my foreign entity. Okay. I continue to receive my salary abroad. And then India के पास debit notes आते हैं. Because foreign entity क्यों bear करेगी वो salary? Because the services are being performed for the Indian entity. Okay. So there will be a cross charge which will happen. This is called a typical secondment arrangement. I'll come on that particular slide. Now, इसमें क्या होता है? इसमें there are host of complications. Secondment arrangement में. So there is a complications around the PE, there is a complication around the FTS, FIS, there is a complication around the GST as well. There's a complication around TP as well. Now, in order to, if you don't want, or you want a very simplistic life, what will you advise your clients? You will say, okay, boss, just put him under the localized Indian employment contract. He has got nothing to do with the foreign entity. His employment with the foreign entity gets terminated. That person is per se on the roles and the employment of the Indian entity only. Then in such a case, we typically call as a localized arrangement, wherein that person will receive salary in India, and if he wants to send his money outside, then normal FEMA liberalized remittance scheme में आप उसको भेज सकते हो उसको, ठीक है ना? तो that is what we call as a localized structure.
That account, bank account will be a normal saving account or NRI?
It will be a normal saving. Normal saving. क्योंकि FEMA के पर्पस से देखो ना, FEMA का रेजिडेंसी पर्पस क्या होता है? As soon as you are in India for employment purpose, you qualify as a resident. और immediately होता है from day one. तो आपका बैंक अकाउंट खुल जाएगा, and once you leave, then the status will change. You can keep, even the foreign nationals can keep their bank account open. I think there was some amendment few years back wherein they said you can keep your foreign account open for receiving legitimate dues. And the legitimate dues क्या होते हैं? Tax refund हो गया या PF का पैसा हो गया.
Again, that person has to file IT at ITCC.
When that person leaves India, ITCC. So that is this slide captures the complete life cycle of the expats in India, right from the initial planning to their arrival to their how the assignment proceeds, their year-end compliance and their end of assignment. क्या-क्या इनके compliances triggers होंगे from the tax, social security and all those different facets. So you can go through the slides. I think this will be shared with you, so you can go through it. Yes, yeah. Now, this is what I was talking about, the secondment arrangement. Now, it might look a bit complex, but whatever I was telling, this is what is in this graphical format. Foreign company payment of the part salary, expats foreign bank account. Then there's a cross charge of the salary cost, and then the Indian might be paying a part salary. This is typically, you would say, I would say almost 90% secondment arrangement are like this, because of the sole reason that the person, the foreign national, when they're coming into India, they would not like to close their payroll. They would like to contribute the social security, and they would not like the overseas entity to terminate their employment. These are the three key reasons why this entire assignment is structured like this. Okay. Now, because of this, there are complications. Okay. These are the issues. There's a permanent establishment exposure, service fee clause, because if I am construed as an employee of the foreign entity, I might end up creating a service fee in India. There's a fee for technical, fee for included services impact, because cross charge होगा, cross charge को आप pay करोगे, आप बोलोगे मेरा cost to cost reimbursement agreement, as Gaurav was telling you. This was one prime example of cost to cost reimbursement agreement, and this is the stand that many companies take, that this is nothing but I am discharging the cost obligation. Per se, it is the salary cost that I'm bearing. I'm just paying the salary cost to, and there's a cost reimbursement agreement which is entered into by the Indian company with the foreign company, pursuant to which they will not do withholding. But Indian tax authorities will always like to argue that this is nothing but a fee for technical services, and accordingly gross amount पे पूरा आपको tax देना होगा. The third important flowing from that fee for technical and permanent establishment is the withholding tax. Fee अगर create हो गया, fee for technical services, fee for included हो गया, तो withholding tax under 195 हो जाएगा. Irrespective of the fact, because you are doing 192 as well. जो salary आपको दे रहे हो, उस पे आप 192 तो कर ही रहे हो. So many companies in their defense, in all these judicial rulings, you will see, they used to put up that defense. कि boss हम 192 करे, 195 कहाँ से लगेगा? But they are disregarding this. Boss ये अलग transaction है, ये अलग transaction है. Okay. Transfer pricing इसलिए लग जाएगा आपका. Transfer pricing, if it is a P, benchmarking study and all those things, transfer pricing documentation maintain करना पड़ेगा. Similarly for FIS and as well. Exchange control implication, as I was telling you earlier. GST impact पहले नहीं था. There was a Volkswagen ruling, there was a Nissan की Supreme Court ruling थी, जिसमें यह था कि GST नहीं या service tax नहीं लगेगा. Earlier it was a service tax regime. So they used to say that wherever a person is employed with the Indian entity, it's a normal employer-employee relationship. Hence, there is no service tax. There is no services being provided. But now with the Northern operating system, they have basically disregarded this. They are saying substance over form. बंदे को salary कौन दे रहा है? बाहर की entity. बंदे का जो एक्सरसाइज होता है लियन है वो कौन कर रहा है, बाहर की एंटिटी. If tomorrow down the line a person wants to sue, if the salary is not being paid to him, who will he sue? He will sue the overseas entity. So they say this is nothing but a employment relationship between the overseas entity and the Indian employee, foreign employee. So we will disregard this entire arrangement and the GST will be applicable. अगर GST लगेगा तो आप उसमें input credit ले लोगे. So it's a revenue neutral sort of thing. But what is happening now is what I am hearing from my clients is कि ठीक है सर, हमने तो पे कर दिया जीएसटी, हमने नॉर्दर्न ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम का कंप्लायंस कर लिया, हमने जीएसटी पे कर दिया, बट इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट कौन देगा?
प्रैक्टिकल अप्रोच क्या है सर, वो बता दीजिए.
हाँ
सर जीएसटी
काफी चलते रहते हैं. Practical approach क्या है?
देखिए जीएसटी में तो
जीएसटी पे तो आपको पोजीशन यही लेनी पड़ेगी.
सर आपको वही बता रहा हूँ कि क्या करना चाहिए. जीएसटी तो आपको पे करना ही पड़ेगा इन एनी केस, बिकॉज द रूलिंग इज दैट एज की डेट सुप्रीम कोर्ट की रूलिंग इज द लैंड ऑफ लॉ. However, for income tax purposes, अभी very recently Google की एक जजमेंट आई है. तो आप क्या कीजिए, जो आपके सेकंडमेंट एग्रीमेंट बनते हैं, आप उस डॉक्यूमेंटेशन को चेक कीजिए, उस एग्रीमेंट की लैंग्वेज को चेक कीजिए, एक एडवाइजरी असाइनमेंट पकड़िए क्लाइंट से और उनको बताइए कि आपके कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में क्या क्या फ्लॉज हैं और उन फ्लॉज को ठीक करवा करके आप जीएसटी में पोजीशन डिफरेंट लीजिए और इनकम टैक्स में पोजीशन डिफरेंट लीजिए. ठीक है, क्योंकि इनकम टैक्स एंड जीएसटी आर टू डिफरेंट लॉज और आप इसमें दो डिफरेंट पोजीशंस ले सकते हो. इवन आफ्टर ये जो गूगल की रूलिंग आई है, वो आफ्टर दिस सुप्रीम कोर्ट रूलिंग आई है.
यस,
उसके बावजूद भी उन्होंने बोला
फ्लिपकार्ट रूलिंग इज आल्सो देयर. बैंगलोर हाई कोर्ट की रूलिंग थी फ्लिपकार्ट, उसमें भी सेम नॉर्दर्न ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम का रेफरेंस दिया कि दिस इज कमिंग फ्रॉम द जीएसटी ओनली.
तो आप बट ये जरूर देखिएगा कि सेंट्रिका का एक जजमेंट है सुप्रीम कोर्ट का सेकंडमेंट अरेंजमेंट. प्लीज डू रीड दैट जजमेंट. सेंट्रिका CENTRICA. तो वो हाँ,
ये सारा मैंने डाला हुआ इसमें, आप लोग ना रेफर कर लेना. मॉर्गन स्टैनली, IDS, these are some of the key rulings for secondment. Just go through it. This will give you a good idea. Centrica is also there and Northern Operating is also there.
सेंट्रिका अगेंस्ट थी, तो उसमें देखिएगा कि क्या क्या चीज उन्होंने कर रखी थी, वो आपको नहीं करनी.
And so far as you were asking कि करना क्या है, so this is covered in this slide. So till the time this advisory what Anshul gave is good till today, unless until something other comes up. Right? क्योंकि लॉ इतना फ्लूइड हो गया कि हम सोचते हैं कि पोजीशन you are acting like my client only. We want solution. ये सब जाने दो, आप सॉल्यूशन बताओ.
सॉल्यूशन बिना पैसे के लिए
नहीं, फॉर डिस्कशन. सो
गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर
बजट आ जाती है, फिर बजट आ जाएगा.
सर ऐसा है ना कि नहले पे दहला वाला है. आप एक पत्ता डालते हो, ऊपर से दो पत्ता रेडी करके रखते हो. अभी हमने that's why what we have captured in this slide is based on all these rulings, what are the must-have factors? See, there are 3 things that you need to keep in mind. जब भी secondment arrangement आपके पास आएगा, यही arrangement होगा by and large. Foreigner nationals यही arrangement मांगेंगे, unless until it is Chinese and all those things. उनका अलग framework होता है, वो तो compliance भी नहीं करते. चलो उनकी बात अलग है. By and large आपके पास होगा, तो आपको 3 contracts बनाने जरूरी हैं. एक होगा secondment letter, which is what the foreign entity will issue to the employee saying ki boss, you were working with us, now for this period you will be seconded to the Indian entity. Then there will be a cost reimbursement agreement between the overseas entity and the Indian entity कि जो भी salary cost आप मेरे को दे रहे हो, just for administrative reasons we are paying it. Now we will raise you the debit note, you pay to us on a cost to cost basis. The third important is the employment contract. Okay, these are the 3 what we call as the diamond agreements that you need to put in place. What those agreements have to put in substance, ये खाली ये नहीं कि आपने बस बना दिया और हो गया जी. Substance over form always prevails. Okay, in substance all these factors have to come into picture. ये जितनी guidelines डाली हैं, it is summation of all those rulings. ये आपको ensure करना पड़ेगा कि whenever you are reviewing the agreements, all these factors are already incorporated there. Okay, plus at the same time हमारे साथ ये भी हुआ है कि ये सारे करने के बावजूद भी उन्होंने क्या किया, वो उन्होंने लिंक्डइन में जाकर के लिख दिया मिस्टर एक्स CEO ऑफ अमेरिकन हेडक्वार्टर्ड कंपनी. टैक्स ऑफिसर मुझे आप ये बता रहे हो, ये तो ये बता रहे हैं, अब आप क्या करोगे? टैक्स ऑफिसर आल्सो बिकम वेरी स्मार्ट. एट द सेम टाइम दे आर कीपिंग दोस विजिटिंग कार्ड्स, ईमेल आईडीज,
ईमेल भी तो मंगा लेते हैं,
ईमेल भी मंगवाते हैं. तो ये सब मतलब सब्सटेंस ओवर फॉर्म प्रिवेल्स. टैक्स अथॉरिटीज आर वेरी स्मार्ट, पर्टिकुलरली इन इंटरनेशनल टैक्सेशन सर्कल.
तो ये सब डिस्कस हुआ
हाँ, तो ये ऑलरेडी हो गया, तो अब मैं टाइम नहीं वेस्ट करूंगा।
सेकंडमेंट में फॉरेन एंटिटी ही देगी सैलरी, तो फिर पीएफ का कैसे उसमें उसमें आता रहता है, पीएफ का जो सोशल सिक्योरिटी का
पीएफ तो देना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि
उसको-
अल्टीमेटली सैलरी
तो फिर उसको नंबर लेना पड़ेगा।
इंडियन एंटिटी करती है ना, बिकॉज द सैलरी इज बीइंग बॉन्ड बाय द इंडियन एंटिटी। क्रॉस चार्ज तो इंडिया के आ गया ना, तो इंडियन एंटिटी पीएफ पे करती है।
टीडीएस में तो 192 में ही होता है।
वो तो इंडियन एंटिटी करी है ना, टीडीएस में तो
192 में होता है।
सारी पोजीशंस आपको अलाइन करनी पड़ेगी।
जनरली दोनों जगह मिल रहा होता है, वहाँ भी मिल रहा होता है, यहाँ भी मिल रहा होता है।
यहाँ भी कुछ तो मिलता ही है थोड़ा बहुत।
वहाँ पे वहाँ तो मैं देख नहीं होता है, वहाँ भी मिल रहा होता है।
सही, इसमें डाल दिया मैंने।
इशू है इसके अंदर कि अगर फॉरेन कंपनी है, जैसे आपने बताया कि अडोबे के केस में फॉरेन कंपनी ईसॉप दे रही है, तो उस पर टीडीएस कौन काटेगा? लाइक 192 में कटेगा इंडियन एंटिटी,
192 में कटेगा, इंडियन कंपनी काटेगी।
बट इंडियन एंटिटी
इसका रीजन मैं बताता हूँ, इसका रीजन क्या है। दिस इज ऑल कमिंग फ्रॉम एफबीटी। एफबीटी रेजिम अगर आप रिमेंबर करोगे तो उसमें ईसॉप से रिलेटेड पूरी गाइडलाइंस आई थी। सो अब उसमें एक क्वेश्चन आपको इफ यू रिकॉल वो होगा कि इवन इफ अब जो आपने ईसॉप दिया है बाहर की एंटिटी ने, वो रिचार्ज करे ना करे, हो सकता है वो कॉस्ट वहीं के वहीं रखें। So whether there is still an implication on the Indian entity or not, the answer is yes. Indian entity will have to do the 192 क्योंकि it is pursuant to those services being rendered to the Indian entity that you are getting that ESOP thing. Again, it will depend on this residential status, but 192 तो Indian entity करेगी।
मैं अभी आपको एक लाइव एग्जांपल बताता हूँ। मार्च में मेरे पास एक क्लाइंट आया 25 मार्च के आसपास कि ये हमारे केस आ गया, सीनियर मैनेजमेंट के 3-4 लोग हैं, उनको ईसॉप्स मिले हैं मार्च में और वेस्टिंग हो गई है, मतलब वो ग्रांट होके एक्सरसाइज हो गए हैं, और वो ईसॉप्स का अमाउंट इतना बड़ा है कि पूरी मार्च की सैलरी को डिडक्ट कर ले तो पीडीएफ नहीं कवर हो रहा उसमें। तो अब क्या करें? रिकवर करें कैसे करें? वो बंदे सैलरी कटवाने को तैयार नहीं, हम सैलरी काटे कहाँ से, पीडीएफ जमा कराएं कहाँ से, और 2 लोग डायरेक्टर लेवल के थे, डायरेक्टर को लोन नहीं दे सकते आप, करें क्या? So these are the kind of situations which arise. So therefore हम बोलते हैं कि आप प्लानिंग ही इस तरीके से करो। आपको पता तो होता है ना वेस्टिंग कब होने वाली है, कब ग्रांट होने वाला है। आप पहले से उनको बोल के रखो एम्प्लॉइज को कि भाई ऐसे मत करो, आपको अगर ग्रांट लेना है तो आप पहले ही बता दो, एक्सरसाइज करना है तो, और नहीं करना है तो फिर आप रिकवरेबल दिखा करके उन्होंने शो किया है बुक्स में, तो टीडीएस तो जमा कराएंगे बट रिकवरेबल दिखाया, तो रिकवरेबल इफ इट इज अ स्टैट्यूटरी लायबिलिटी रिकवरेबल है, तो पोजीशन ये लिया कि इट इज नॉट अ लोन टू द एम्प्लॉई। सो दीज आर द काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशंस व्हिच डू अराइज इन नॉर्मल कोर्स, जहां पे आप किसी भी मल्टीनेशनल सब्सिडियरी के साथ डील कर रहे हो।
Yeah. So I think that's all for today. I think some clarification we got. बाकी ऐसा अगर आप बोलने को बोलोगे हम बहुत देर तक बोल सकते हैं, कंसल्टेंट की यही खासियत होती है। हम हमारे साथ ये ना बीवी के आगे नहीं बोलते हैं, मतलब के आगे बोलते हैं।
कहीं तो कसर निकालनी है ना,
कहीं तो निकालनी है।
तो आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट, आपने कहीं ना कहीं सोशल मीडिया पे देखा होगा, लिंक्डइन पे या फेसबुक पे ये पोस्ट डली होगी सुमित जी की या मेरी, आप अपना फीडबैक जरूर दीजिएगा उस पे कि किस तरीके का आपको लगा, बिकॉज इट हेल्प्स बोथ स्पीकर्स आल्सो एज वेल एज जो नए पार्टिसिपेंट्स कल को हम और ऑर्गेनाइज कराएंगे, तो दे आल्सो गेट टू नो पे आपने क्या इसमें प्लस पॉइंट थे या
वीडियो अपलोड कर देना, फोटो अपलोड कर देना, अपने होगा फीडबैक।
हाँ, सो हम जरूर करेंगे, प्लीज, इट्स अ हम्बल रिक्वेस्ट। एंड कल का भी
हाँ, कल टुमारो वी हैव 2 सेशंस बिफोर लंच। पोस्ट लंच देयर इज नो सेशन, जैसा कि मैंने सुबह बताया था। पोस्ट लंच वाला जो सेशन है वो ऑनलाइन करेंगे, सचिन जी इज नॉट अवेलेबल टुमारो, सो वी हैव 2 सेशंस फ्रॉम 10 to 1:30। सो फर्स्ट हाफ में सभी लोगों को जरूर आना है। बिफोर दैट टुडे आई वांट टू कंक्लूड बाय ऑनरिंग, लास्ट से शुरू करते हैं, फर्स्ट अनुराग जी को आई रिक्वेस्ट, आजा कोमल भी आजा, टू ऑनर अनुराग जी बाय प्रेजेंटिंग ए। अनुराग जी
एक मिनट, ये बता दो
क्या
अब तो खत्म हो गया ना,
क्या था?
ये कैसे
ये तो रहती है, परमानेंट रहती है। हाँ, ये नहीं रहती है। No issues, sir.
नीचे कर सकते हैं।
अनुराग जी
चलिए,
का
कर दो नीचे कर दो।
कोमल भैया
इसके ऊपर
एक
करो,
वो भी,
यहाँ से नीचे कर दो।
अनुराग अंशुल जी आप भी आ जाओ।
हाँ,
ये निकालो, एक मिनट।
Thank you.
Now I request Gaurav ji. आशा जी कनका जी आ जाओ. अमित भाई आप भी आ जाओ. गौरव जी please. And man of the day, Mr. Anshul Singhal. Please give a big round of applause. I request everyone to join us. Have a great photograph and sharing token of appreciation. Anshul ji, although tomorrow he is also available. Are सब सारे आ गए? लाइट बोल दो, सर सुनिए सर एक लाइट बोल दो वहाँ पर खत्म होगा. हाँ बस. आ जाओ सर सारे आ जाओ. हैं? ये सारे यहीं से आ जाएंगे सर.
आ जाए मैक्सिमम.
सारे आ रहे हैं.
हाँ तो सारे गए इधर से थोड़े.
सेक्टर से ले सेक्टर से. जो छोटे हैं वो आगे आ जाए.
एयर में बढ़ जाती है, तो बढ़ेगा।
खड़ा होके लेगा.
याद रहेगा।
Tomorrow topic is 15 CV and second one. कौन सा? So I request everyone to join tomorrow 10 o'clock. And first topic is 15 CV and case study, and second session is royalty fee for technical services. So see you tomorrow, everyone. Thank you very much.
Certificate will come.
सर्टिफिकेट कल मिलेंगे.
Certificate and
जो फ्री कल मिलेंगे.
तुम तो आओगे भाई.
मैं आ रही हूँ.
Thank you everyone for joining, and tomorrow we will be meeting at 10 a.m.